All right, so this week on Elite Heat, we're going to be talking about the face that runs the place, John Cena. Pretty appropriate time, right? Like, we totally didn't plan this or anything to talk about John Cena right before he made his return to WWE. Yeah. So with that being said, I'll just welcome in the regular Elite Heat co-host, Elitist. How you doing, sir?
Yo, I'm doing good. And yeah, Kevin, we never forecast this. In a million years, we could never have seen that Cena would have come back. We definitely didn't have this planned and written down for about 3 months in advance. But nonetheless, it's all good. We're doing our Cena bio. This should be a stack of fun. This is gonna be a two-parter. So this one is gonna be covering like a mass majority of like Cena's career, and then next episode is a lot of kind of legacy talk and just stuff with his current run. So it's gonna be a stack of fun, Kevin. Can I like to discuss the face that runs the place there, John?
Yeah, it seems kind of like the formula for us right now is like when we have a superstar or a wrestler, if you will, that is worthy of talking about for maybe 3 to 4 hours, like John Cena is. Instead of doing that in one episode, we'll spend like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours here, and then another 2 hours next week, or maybe sometime down the line. We'll give it a little two-parter. John Cena, if anybody is worth a two-part episode, I think it's John Cena. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, some could argue he's worth a three-parter, but yeah, we'll settle with two. Just because we love Cena, but I think three different parts of an Elite Heat bio could be a bit excessive. But yeah, it's gonna be a fun two-part bio. We're gonna go over everything really, or at least try to. I'm sure someone, some commenter is gonna be like, "Oh, you missed his match on SmackDown against Hardcore Holly in 2004." But nonetheless, Kevin, we'll try our best to cover all the important stuff with Cena because man deserves it. Incredible career. It's gonna be fun to talk about.
Absolutely. I guess off top, we'll start with just what just transpired. John Cena just made his return. We're on the heels. What 6 days ago he made his return at Money in the Bank, and then he was on Raw, and he's going to be on SmackDown tonight. We're taping this about 2 hours before SmackDown, so John Cena's going to be there. First thing I'll ask you, what are your thoughts about John Cena's return? We touched on this on Money in the Bank review, but like, what do you think John Cena means to wrestling? I wouldn't say like what he means to wrestling overall. What do you think he means to wrestling right now in 2021 and beyond?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. It really is. Because Cena is such a weird one, because for many years there was the whole narrative, Cena killed wrestling, Cena drove away fans. Really, one thing I've been seeing just generally and realizing as time goes on is that Cena didn't kill wrestling; he just changed the audience. He was the face for a new era of wrestling. And now that he went away for about a year and a half, he's come back. I think people were almost unanimously very appreciative because you see the star that Cena is, and it means a lot for wrestling. It really does to have Cena back. I mean, you heard it with the pop of Money in the Bank, Kevin. Like, my God, like the building was shaking. So, yeah, I think having Cena back is awesome for wrestling. It brings an air of excitement that wrestling hasn't really had in a while. Because 2020 had its moments. Edge returning was awesome. Reigns did some good stuff. McIntyre was good. Sasha and Bayley were good. But on the whole, nothing really compares to the hype that Cena return generated, and in turn, the hype SummerSlam had. So, to answer the question, hopefully it means really good things to wrestling. I really do because my man deserves it. So, what do you think?
What I think Cena means for wrestling in the current day is he keeps them relevant. He keeps the ship alive. He keeps them above water because he's clearly there and he's doing Roman Reigns' job better than Roman Reigns can, and that's still those words that Cena said in 2017, they're still ring true today. Cena comes back and he's the talk of town, but there's also like a point too where there's only so much that Cena can do. There's only like you have Cena out there, and then you're following that up with Jackson Riker, or you have a show that's
Yeah.
littered with like Nia Jax and Natalia running around and Shayna Baszler talking to Lily Dolls. Like, there's only so much that people can tolerate. Where even though like you can send somebody the clip of Cena returning, you'd be like, "Oh my God, it's Cena," and then they turn on Raw to go watch Cena, and then 45 minutes into the show, you've got like Apollo Crews doing a bad Nigerian accent, getting yelled at.
No, I need to fix it up so no commenter gets angry. Yes, I know Apollo Crews on SmackDown. The whole point is that it'll be some jobber like a Jackson Riker match, or it'll be Shayna Baszler screaming at a doll, or it'll be I don't bloody know what else happens on Raw. Mandy Rose is off Raw, so I was gonna say Mandy and Dana, but you get the point. It's just
That'll be tonight on SmackDown. You have Cena and Reigns. They'll do like a confrontation. That'll be really epic. and then the next segment would be like Apollo Crews getting beat up by some random person, whoever, Shinsuke Nakamura, insert whoever is going to beat up
Yeah.
Apollo, and then some casual is going to be like, oh, okay, I'm not going to watch this then. Like, I don't care if John Cena's there. Like, you can just go watch John Cena on the big screen or on a TV show or in commercials. Like, if you really need to get your John Cena fix. I think he's outgrown wrestling in a lot of ways. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. You look at the landscape of wrestling, and obviously people nowadays are, I guess, better in ring. The in ring moves are more crisp. Everyone's spent 2 decades training to wrestle, and now the in ring's flawless, but there's nothing really else with a lot of guys nowadays. So in that regard, Cena is just exponentially bigger, more successful, more relevant, more interesting, more fascinating than anyone nowadays. And one thing I find interesting there with the Cena and Reigns stuff, you mentioned Cena brings relevancy back to WWE and does Reigns' job better than he does in that regard. I think that's hilarious because Roman Reigns' bit for the past year is that he's on the island of relevancy. He's the head of the table. Like when you fight the Golden Glove, you're relevant. So to see Cena come back and be exponentially more relevant than Reigns is just hilarious.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then I'll say overall what Cena means to wrestling. I'm pretty sure you'll agree with this. John Cena was the guy that bridged the gap from the from the Attitude Era to the Ruthless Aggression Era and the PG era. He was the gap between Austin, Rock, and then you had Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle, those guys in between. And Cena was the next guy, and Cena really held the ball for 15 years, an unprecedented run. His run is bigger and better than Hulk Hogan's run on top. Maybe not better, but bigger. Hulk Hogan wasn't on top for 15 years, and then on top of that, Cena did it in the modern era, where there's so many TV shows, so many hours of matches, just countless cycle of filler. Hogan wrestled once every 3 weeks.
Yep.
There was a pay-per-view every 3 months. Cena was doing it month in, month out for 15 years. He hardly ever took breaks. Just the ultimate Iron Man, the hardest working wrestler of all time. I don't even think that's up for debate at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about this in more detail in the second part about how, Paul Heyman and a bunch of people consider Cena the genuine greatest of all time. It's not because of his, how great his status was in WWE TV. He didn't reach, there's the heights of Hogan and Austin or Rock, if that makes sense, as far as just what he was doing. But when it comes to his longevity of dedication, perseverance, excellence, no one did what Cena did. When you have days where you sleep 4 hours, you travel, make a media appearance here, you do your gym workout, you do another media appearance, you make a wish, you're promoting WWE on this, you do the live event, then you get on the tour bus and you sleep for 3 hours, and then you go to this town, you're the face of Raw for this. It's just, he did that for over a decade as the top guy. It's unbelievable. So Kevin, unless there's anything else you want to say, I think we can get into the definitive timeline of Cena's career there, John.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So John Cena comes into WWE in 2001. It's really odd to think that Cena has been around in WWE for that long. It's just crazy. He came in at the tail end of the Attitude Era. He was in OVW. We all know he was in OVW with himself, John Cena, Randy Orton, Brock Lesnar. Yeah, Shelton Benjamin in that class. Batista. Just an unbelievable class of talent for that OVW developmental class. It's really that's a legacy in and of itself. It's kind of like the NBA draft class that had, LeBron James and Melo and Wade and all those guys in a lot of respects. It's really crazy to think because nowadays you have I guess people would point to a modern example of this class would be the NXT class of Finn Balor, Kevin Owens, Hideo Itami, those guys. That's maybe the best example. But it's insane to think that John Cena was just plucked out of nowhere. He went from I think he worked at a gym if I remember correctly, and then he's just all of a sudden in OVW, and then he's in WWE. It's really humble beginnings.
Yeah, well, the thing with Cena is that he was an aspiring bodybuilder, and obviously he loved wrestling growing up for sure. He was a massive wrestling fan growing up, but really he was an aspiring bodybuilder. And then, in years since, we've had a couple wrestlers bring that up in promos. It's you're only here because you couldn't cut it as a bodybuilder and that kind of thing. But really, just generally, Cena's OVW class. Brock Lesnar, Batista, Randy Orton. Cena talks about it, because Batista and Brock Lesnar were I mean, physically, those are the guys who are like, oh my god. Like Brock Lesnar is just a once in a lifetime like specimen. Like you just don't make Brock Lesnar's. So Lesnar was always like kind of the one who was like, he is going to be the one we push immediately. Batista was always the one who, when he came in, he was like 32, 33. But even then, because of his physique and those attributes and those intangibles, he was always going to be like a priority star. And then Randy Orton was like, oh well, his dad was Bob Orton. He's the third generation WWE superstar. So Randy Orton was always, even then, above Cena in like that pecking order, so to speak. And then Cena was just like the fourth guy. But out of the other three, compared to the other three, he was the hardest working one. He was the one who had the most dedication to the business. He was the one who, tried to push himself more than any of the others, especially Randy Orton. And in reality, it worked out for Cena. His career went pretty well, didn't it, pal?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's funny. Yeah, you mentioned the hardest worker. I think it goes to show, and definitely the most passionate. Brock Lesnar just there for a check, and we're like, oh, we want you, pal. You're a college wrestler. Come make some money. Randy Orton could care less. And then, Batista, I mean, you could say Batista was passionate. I think Batista...
we're not saying Batista didn't have passion. But, I mean, in the long run, when you look at it, I mean, Cena and what he did clearly shows he was the most passionate out of all of them. And Batista, I mean, Batista's whole story, correct me if I'm wrong here, but his whole thing was that, he was, I believe, homeless. He went to prison or that kind of stuff. And then he made a WWE in, like, his early 30s. And that was, like, he finally made it. So, it's... Cena in the long run just outshines the rest of them, and especially compared to Brock and Randy. But, yeah.
Right. What I was going to say with Batista before you cut me off was that Batista, he has the passion, but he gets overwhelmed by the fans, and he lets the fans get to him. And like when he got booed when he came back in 2014, he didn't like it. He didn't like getting booed towards the end of his career. He didn't like the PG direction. John Cena rolled with all the punches. If Vince told him, "Hey, look, this is what we're doing now, pal. No more blood, no more cursing. We're gonna do this. We're gonna appear to kids." That's what Cena was gonna do. Cena gets booed. He gets threatened in was it New York for ECW One Night Stand 06. He rolls with the punches. So Cena is just a lifer, and he still comes back. He still makes time for WWE. It's insane. But yeah, moving on. So Cena makes his debut in 2002 on an episode of SmackDown, and the rest is history. Good, man.
Yeah.
Play it out for us.
Yeah, so you've got a time in WWE where, I mean, you're June 2002, you've got Austin's taking his ball and left because he has to put Brock Lesnar over in a Raw match. You've got The Rock's there, but the sense is he's going to leave and go to Hollywood imminently. You've got your Hogans and stuff are back, but they're not going to be the future of the company. Hogan at that stage was, just getting old. Like, you got a WWE landscape which is ever changing, it's shifting. WWE are panicking. They need something new, something fresh. So Kurt Angle's in the ring cutting a promo, and he does like a little open challenge, I believe, and then Cena comes out to a bit of a generic bum theme song. He comes out looking like Creator Wrestler Prototype 1, coming out there all jacked up, wearing just basic boxers. He comes out and yells, ruthless aggression. I'm John Cena at Kurt Angle, and then slaps him, and they do a match, and just Kevin. This debut was so memorable. It was one of these debuts which, this was 2 decades ago. You need to do no research to remember what this was. It's up there with Jericho's debut. It's up there with, it's one of the best debuts ever just because of the gravity of the situation. Like, Kevin, you can speak to this pretty well. Like, he's confronting Kurt Angle is a big deal. Like, that's nothing to,
Yeah, and people disrespect this, comparing some jobber in NXT confronting Adam Cole to this Cena and Kurt Angle, but I digress. It's something that, when you look at this moment, I've always said this moment could have gone one of two ways. This would have been something that WWE would have completely whitewashed had John Cena failed. It's funny that you call him the prototype wrestler, because I believe that's what he went by in OVW. He was called the Prototype. That was his gimmick name before he just decided to go with his real name. And he comes out, he does this thing with Kurt Angle, and it could have gone one of two ways. If Cena gets fired, you'd never hear about this moment again. But since it all worked out and John Cena went on to be a top 10 of all time, WWE, they try to convince you to think that they always had that plan for Cena, right? Like, when hindsight, now they're like, oh, this is one of the greatest debuts ever. Look at this debut. Cena slapped Kurt Angle, the Olympic hero. But in reality, it was like, oh, it was a good segment. Like, it didn't hit the same, like with Jericho. They tried to create a star. with Cena, it was like they didn't really do anything with him afterwards. It was like, oh, he has his match with Kurt Angle, and he wrestled Jericho, and then that was it. Then he was just hanging out and catering, just eating food, just chilling for about like 3 to 4 months.
Like I don't think anyone can, even WWE with the power of hindsight can say, oh well, from the moment Cena debuted, we knew he was going to be that guy for us. He was going to be the next star, the next Mount Rushmore superstar. Like that wasn't the case, especially in early October 2002 when there were backstage discussions about him getting the sack. Like it's just
that goes back to what you said about the pecking order. It was like, yeah, Orton's gonna be a star, Brock's gonna be a star, Batista's gonna be a star. Oh, and then there's a Cena guy that looks like a bodybuilder.
Yeah, literally, and like, I mean, it's just that pecking order, dude. The fact that Randy Orton comes in having no experience, a terrible attitude. He's still above Cena in the pecking order because he's an Orton, but yeah, nonetheless. So you get to 2002. I mean, I mentioned in my what I've seen in Never Left video, but Cena, he's about to get the axe, and then Stephanie McMahon hears him, I believe, on a tour bus doing like a rap battle with Rey Mysterio and Rikishi, and then she was like, "Oh, that's cool," and then that proceeded to become a gimmick for Cena. He got an opportunity, and unlike certain wrestlers, Randy Orton, Cena actually took his opportunities and ran with them. Cena, Kevin, became the Doctor of Thuganomics there, John. So Kevin, when you think about the Doctor of Thuganomics with retrospect, walk me through what that gimmick makes you feel.
Oh, I mean, I feel joy. I think of just being a kid and watching Cena and Eddie Guerrero wrestle, or Cena like coming out there doing his rap battles with Big Show, Kurt Angle, and I just think about like those, like he would come out in a pay-per-view, he would like open the pay-per-view, it'd be like second or third on the card, and he'd be so over, he'd be doing his rhyme, and the crowd would cheer along with it, and like every time the rhyme was different. Every time he had a different promo, and his swag too. It was like, you look at John Cena, Dr. Thuganomics. That was the epitome of what pop culture and what swag was in 03 and 04. Like we talk about this on my 100 Reasons Why Raw Sucks video. Everybody looks the same. John Cena in 03, he looked different than everybody else. He came out with, if he was in Chicago, he come out with a Cubs jersey, or if he was in LA, he come out with like a Lakers jersey. That was cool. He come out, jean shorts, they were the thing and back then. But just Cena was cool, man. Dr. Thuganomics was cool. Then I want to talk about him nearly getting fired too for a second again. Yeah. Because that's just crazy to think about. Like we have to spend at least like just like a minute or two on this because I know you made a whole video about it. But like if Cena got fired, that legitimately would change wrestling forever. Like the wrestling as we know, the last 20 years of our lifetimes would be completely different. Who knows? Like, who knows what what would WrestleMania 28 look like if John Cena got fired? Would The Rock have come back? Would there have been a WrestleMania 28? Like, what? Who knows? It's a fascinating what if.
God, yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I know. Like, if Cena never, like, God forbid, I know it's not Cena's DNA, but yeah, Cena gets fired and then he goes, becomes like a successful bodybuilder and just drops wrestling. Imagine that, you got WrestleMania 28, main evented by Randy Orton versus Sheamus for the WWE title for the 5th straight time. Like, that's horrifying. That's terrible. So, yeah, I mean, thank God the timeline worked the way it did, or else we would have had Randy Orton getting like a main event babyface push for like 3 years, like,
yeah, for
Jesus.
Real. Yeah, Randy Orton jumping out of cakes every single week. So
yeah.
what do you think about the Doctor of Thuganomics? For me, this was my favorite version of Cena. Now, whether you think this is the best version of Cena or not, that's up to you to decide. But what do you think about it? What are your overall thoughts?
I think character-wise, it's his best stuff. I think when you compare this to his, rise above hate, never give up, I'm going to come out every week to open Raw, cutting a 15-minute Star Wars promo version of Cena. I think the Doctor of Thuganomics is clearly like his best character work. I think my favorite part of this is, as Cena's talked about in the interviews, the best thing about this was that he'd show up to SmackDown, early in the day. He'd probably get there before most people, on the locker room. He'd get there, and then he'd be literally told, "You've got 2 minutes of promo time. Write something. Think of something." So he'd sit in the, up in the stands by himself, writing out raps, promos. He's thinking. He's being innovative, creative. What would get over, what would get a reaction, what can, be memorable, what could get, pops. And that got him thinking. There was some creative leverage there. how much that was Paul Heyman's, doing, how much that was maybe Vince. Like, Cena had leverage. So in that regard, to answer the question, I thought it was brilliant. I think, you mentioned there, it was pop culture. It was in. He was wearing the different teams' jerseys every arena he was going into. That always helps if you're a babyface. And nowadays, no one really does stuff like that. It's just, I thought it was excellent. I really did. I think it made him a superstar. It really did. It took him from the prototype, just generic creator wrestler one, to this dude is super cool. He's going to do a funny rap mentioning nuts and mentioning all this kind of stuff on this random heel on SmackDown. Like, it was bloody great.
Absolutely. And then nowadays, like Ricochet shows up to the arena and Vince tells him, "Oh, you got 2 minutes, pal. Give me something." Ricochet takes 30 seconds and he's like, "Oh, I'll take Sheamus's hat and I'll take his scepter and I'll run away." And then he spends the other 2.5 hours backstage, like making TikToks, you know? Yeah, like, could you imagine in this era, like if 2003 John Cena was planted into this era, he'd be looking at all the people doing TikToks and he'd be like, why would I do that? Like, I'm gonna go to the gym. I'm gonna make myself better. I want to work on promos. You know what I mean? Like, he's just built different, just different DNA.
God, yeah. Yeah, like, you imagine 03 Cena walks backstage, like, 03 Cena from a locker room where you've got The Undertaker and, like, young Brock Lesnar, who is at his, like, physical apex just about. You got Kurt Angles, you got, like, Hulk Hogan's just casually walking backstage. You got The Rock's there, you've got all these, like, greatest of all time superstars. And there's such ambition there. There's a drive to be the top guy. There's a real drive to make money for the wrestling business. And then you take that guy and you have him show up in a locker room nowadays, and he walks into the locker room and he sees Ricochet throwing it back with Reginald for a TikTok. He sees Nia Jax and Natalya braiding each other's hair. You see Ali and Sami Zayn playing Mortal Kombat. And bro, what is this, bro? What is this? But yeah, Kevin, just ridiculous.
Absolutely. Then one of Cena's biggest moments, we had to spend a little bit talking about this, was WrestleMania 20. I would say that's really John Cena's coming out party. He's had, he had some minor moments there. You had like that, like I mentioned, the rap battles, stuff like that. But really, WrestleMania 20 was Cena's coming alive party, and that was when we're in the Madison Square Garden. You've got you got Austin on the card as special guest referee. You've got Triple H, Benoit. You've got Brock Goldberg, and Cena gets the best reaction out of anybody the whole night. You got Eddie, Kurt Angle. And Cena gets his big babyface reaction. Everybody's loving Cena. It's really a parallel. It's just weird. It's just odd to see, like especially in hindsight when you go back and watch this moment where Cena's getting cheered. When you think all these years, like Cena goes back to the Garden in like 2015, he's getting booed out of the building. They're saying John Cena sucks and all this. It's just weird to look at this WrestleMania 20 moment. What did you think about it?
I thought it was great. I mean, yeah, you make a great point there as far as how it stood out to everyone else. And I was going to quickly mention this. Yeah, this wasn't Cena's first like big moment. Some people will be like, "Oh well, he was in the WWE title match against Brock Lesnar in Backlash 2003." Yeah, okay, that was a bit of a test for him. That's always the Vince McMahon test of, let's see if you can hack it against the top guy. And Cena could at that Backlash match. So you fast forward to this WrestleMania 20. Madison Square Garden is just erupting for Cena. They're going crazy. By this point, Cena's cool. He's the new. He's fresh. On a WrestleMania, which it was the 20th anniversary of WrestleMania, is where it all begins again. That was the whole thing with WrestleMania. Back in the Garden, you got all the biggest stars in wrestling history outside of Hulk Hogan run that show, pretty much. That's Randy Savage, but all the best ones from like the last decade, or the previous decade before Mania 20, Kevin, were there. And just Cena got the best reaction, which is nuts. And I mean, I guess it helps with that you can't look back upon the main event and really talk about that, but yeah, just crazy reaction, crazy moment for Cena. Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, what happened in the moment, for those of you who don't know, is it was John Cena versus Big Show in the opening match of the card for the United States Championship. And John Cena does this really impressive AA on Big Show. Like, it was like a legitimate, like, oh my God moment. Now, we're so used to them now. They're the famous WrestleMania 25 moment that he did with Big Show and Edge. Just throughout the years, Cena's done just superhuman strength feats. But this was like, wow. And it really forced people to pay attention to Cena. You could argue this is Big Show's biggest WrestleMania match too. I mean, it's really like one of the only singles matches that Big Show had at WrestleMania, and that's all for John Cena. But I'll ask you this too: what are some of your favorite Word Life segments? Are there any that stick out to you? Any of your favorite
I mean, the one with where he was the contract spanking Stephanie McMahon's work rate. I think that deserves a mention.
Yeah.
I think you're best to talk about that. I mean, this whole era. I'm not gonna like lie and act as though I've watched every segment every week. I was loving it because I was barely alive at this point. So, Kevin, this is your area of expertise. Walk the great Elite Heat listeners through some of the best World Life segments, especially Stephanie McMahon's work rate.
Yeah, you mentioned that one with Stephanie McMahon's work rate. That was another moment where people really took notice of Cena. It was like anytime that a wrestler does something with a McMahon, whether it's Shane, Vince, Linda, or Stephanie, people are gonna take note of it. And this one, is no different. Cena and Stephanie, they're having a little confrontation. They get a little flirty. Stephanie's like, "Oh, you wanna spank me, whatever." Lifts up her skirt. Cena spanks her, and then it's like, "Wow, okay." Cena touches the old work rate, pal. Damn it. It's one of those things that still you can find this anywhere. It's still relevant. People just love this. It's one of the most meme worthy moments in wrestling history. There's nothing like a young John Cena slapping Stephanie McMahon's backside and the way he reacted all giddy and whatnot. It was just it was a perfect segment. It was good. This is stuff that we don't see in wrestling anymore. And I think that is Vince McMahon's daughter, the woman that's like the spearhead of the women's agenda, and and we have to be no edges, everything flat, just PC down the line. To see Stephanie McMahon and John Cena engaged in this, it really feels like it happened in an alternate universe. Like if you showed somebody that's never watched wrestling before, you sat them down, you showed them an episode of Raw from like 2020 pre-pandemic or like 2019 or 2018. You show them this where you have like Stephanie McMahon out there like singing Charlotte Flair's praises, and she's out there like yelling at Roman Reigns, slapping him to show her dominance, and Roman Reigns is just sitting there taking it. And then you show the same person has never seen wrestling before. You show them the clip of Cena spanking Stephanie McMahon, and you're like, what are they? How are they gonna react? And you'd be like, no, that's not the same girl. What? Like, it just wouldn't make any sense, you know?
Well, the thing I love about this is one of those clips which people could scroll through, see on their Instagram feed, and then they'd know me as the wrestling guy, so they'd send me this going, "Oh, this is great. This is hilarious. This is funny. I love this." Like, this is one of like those segment clips, like ones like that we don't really see nowadays. Like, no one is scrolling through Instagram, sees Ricochet stealing Sheamus's hat, and goes, "Oh, I know Jimmy's a wrestling guy. I'll send that to him." Like, no one does that.
No.
Like, no one goes, "Oh my god, I'm gonna actively look at Ricochet stealing a hat," and that's an epic moment. Like, no, Cena with Stephanie McMahon's work rate is a funny, memorable segment. This happened, 18 years ago now? Going on 19 years?
Mm-hmm.
And we're still reminiscing on it so fondly because it was genuinely hilarious and super entertaining. And goes to show you, I mean, that was super cool. That was over. No one finds Stephanie McMahon yelling at the audience about how great women's work rate is. No one finds that captivating and entertaining. No one's going to share that clip to all their friends and go, "Oh my god, this is funny." No one's going to do that. But you have John Cena and Stephanie McMahon's work rate. People are going to share that. They're going to find it funny. It's going to be clipped. It's just big juxtaposition, Kevin. Big juxtaposition.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll spend another few minutes just reminiscing again. Cena Eddie Guerrero, their rivalry on the undercard, like that really helped put both guys on the map. It showed one thing. It showed one thing about Eddie, that Eddie could be the guy, the veteran that could carry a feud with a young upcoming guy. And it showed that Cena could hang with a veteran like Eddie, and it helped elevate both those guys. It was right before Eddie got his big push. Then, of course, Cena ascended and continued on his big push. There's the parking lot brawl, one of my favorite matches. There's just obviously the rap battles with Kurt Angle and Big Show. Those are the most memorable. I would say the most memorable Dr. Thuganomics segments. There's the one.
Bro, that Big Show rap battle. Can we talk about that for a moment?
Yes.
That is hilarious. Big Show's out there, this 450 pound, 7-foot man who's like 35. He's got like the bandana on. He's got like the size 6XL like jersey on, and he's going like toe to toe. It was just stuff like that's so just entertaining. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. It's being entertained. Stuff like that is just brilliant. I've watched that back like 4 different times. That's so funny.
It's an all-time segment. The thing about these Dr. Thuganomics segments with John Cena was there's not so many that are super memorable. Like, he doesn't have like Austin beer truck moments or pushing Tyson. He doesn't have those kind of moments. throughout this time. It was just everything was very good, very consistent. Like you could find a compilation of Cena's raps and you could be very entertained. You know, just Cena was that good. There's the one where he's dressed up. I believe he's dressed up as Vanilla Ice on the SmackDown Halloween. He raps at Stephanie. Like that's just another one that people remember.
That's
Yeah.
great. That's great. I mean, just generally. I mean, it helped his ascent to stardom, and really that transitions us, Kevin. I think we're ready to move into '05 now. You have the '05 Rumble, where you've got Cena and Batista as the clear two next stars. Batista wins the match after Vince McMahon tears both quads, getting in the ring. Oh, damn it! After Vince tears his quads, and then Vince on the ground screaming. Batista ends up winning just. And yeah, I mean, from that moment on, Cena didn't win that match, Kevin, but you knew that was the guy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You knew that Cena and Batista were the two guys. It was clear as day. Because then at WrestleMania 21, John Cena he defeats JBL for the WWE Championship. Batista defeats Triple H for the World Championship in the main event. But nevertheless, you have John Cena, the champion of SmackDown, the top guy, and it was so evident there that John Cena was going to be the top guy. Like Batista had it for a little bit, then he gets injured. They move him to SmackDown, but it was evident that Cena was the guy. You could see it from a mile away. He was larger than life. He was a larger than life personality. You could maybe compare him to The Rock with his mic skills. He was and he had it all. He could have good matches too. He could do everything. He could have good matches, good segments. He looked the part. '05 was the year of Cena, I would say.
Well, yeah, Kevin, I mean, it starts off, got the feud with John Bradshaw Layfield. This is some iconic content right here. I mean, this is the same JBL who, I mean, Kevin, remind us, what was JBL doing in 2004, pal?
JBL's 2004. He was, he was reminding us that he's better than us because he's in the stocks. He's an author. He's on Fox News. He was beating up Eddie Guerrero. He was kicking Mexicans out of the border. No big deal. He was hunting Mexicans like deer, stopping them from coming into the United States on an episode of SmackDown. He's what?
I want to go that real quickly for a moment.
Wait. Let me say this. Let me say this for 2 seconds. Yeah. He's hailing Hitler at house shows. He's giving Eddie Guerrero's mother a heart attack. He's doing everything under the sun. He's just got a super heel run. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh my god! I think nowadays wrestlers who get booed in wrestling get genuinely offended. But nonetheless, you're JBL doing that, and Kevin, I want to really quickly just make this point. So you're the demographic who realistically, based on today's logic, you should have been so horrified by when JBL was doing these things with Mexican. You should have been so offended. You should have tried to cancel WWE. You should have tried to boycott them. Kevin, walk us through what a young you was thinking watching JBL yelling at Mexicans at the border.
A young me doesn't really remember this. I don't really remember having any reaction to it. But I look back at it and I'm like, this is great. Like, it's entertaining. It's funny. It's comedic. Yes, it's probably not in the best taste. But it was funny. And it's fake, but wrestling is just in such a weird bag where you can't do these things now. You can't.
Yeah, because you do this stuff in wrestling. It's a true hate crime in real life. But anyway, moving on. So JBL's evil. WrestleMania 21. I remember the build to this. You got Cena pouring water in JBL's hat and putting it on him. JBL gets all angry and gets embarrassed, and Cena spray paints JBL's several $100,000 car, and just great build. And then Kevin, this was the coronation, pal.
Yeah, this is the coronation of John Cena. I remember he rode on JBL's limo, spray painted it like NWO style. But yeah, this was it. WrestleMania 21. Everybody knew Cena was going to win. JBL was kind of a fluky champion. It was he's one of the most unlikely champions of all time. Just from what you consider what he was before. But yeah, so you have Cena. I mean, like I said, he became the guy. He was on SmackDown for a short time. Then he gets moved to Raw almost immediately after that in '05. And it became clear that Cena was the franchise. He was the number one guy. What did you think about him being moved to Raw?
I don't really know. I kind of like it. I think the moment where he did move, and he made his shocking Raw debut and Jericho's in the ring being like, oh my. That segment was good. I think he had a better. I think on Raw he was more suited. I really do. I think Batista was better off on SmackDown in hindsight, being the cool world champion, wouldn't have to speak as much because Raw was the entertainment show at the end of the day. And Cena, out of Batista and Cena was the better sports entertainer as far as the promos and the segments. So I think in that regard, it worked out well and was better off in the long run. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's well stated. Raw is the entertainment show. Raw at that point. Raw was the flagship show. Raw was the entertainment show, and it made all the sense in the world to have him there. I thought like he goes to Raw. He's doing some good stuff. The feud with Jericho was okay. Then it gets kind of spotty there. I don't remember much of what he did going into late 05. And then
Well, late 05, you've got. I mean, he has the stuff with Jericho for SummerSlam. Jericho by that point was like burnt out with wrestling. He wanted to take a break, so he put Cena over a couple of times. He did the loser of Jericho loses, he leaves town match, and Jericho getting escorted out, kicking and screaming as Bischoff fired him. I remember you have Cena having a match with Kurt Angle or a general kind of feud with Kurt Angle at that point. Jericho had a match. Cena had a match with I think I forget who, but it was just Angle and Jericho mainly at that time.
So he's feuding with Angle, and then you look at 06. Then it gets really is when 06 is like,
here we go.
Yeah,
here we go.
This is the point where we have to talk about it. I don't even know how to attack this. You look at 06. Cena's undoubtedly the top guy, but then things start to change a little bit. Edge cashes in, beats him for the title at Revolution. Then Cena's given the belt immediately, just given right back to him 3 weeks later at the Royal Rumble in 06. And people are like, oh, okay, all right, this is what's going to happen. Now Cena's never going to win, or he's never going to lose. He's always going to win. And a vocal minority becomes very, very angry at John Cena. And it's like you've got this cool attitude era wrestler and Triple H that they're feuding now going into WrestleMania 22. And Triple H is buying into it. He's saying, oh, you can't wrestle. You're goofball. You're this, you're that. I'm the cool guy. And it's Triple H. Everybody loves Triple H. Even if they don't want to admit it.
Do they though, really? Really, Kevin? The same guy who's being booed out of the building for several years, cutting 25-minute opening segment promos on Raw every week? That guy?
Yeah, every wrestling fan loves him deep down. Everyone does. I'm convinced. It's just, in 06, you think about it. Think about it in 06. You're looking at Triple H, who's coming off the Attitude Era as part of DX. It was just a different time. Maybe now opinions have changed, but at that point, everybody loved Triple H. And we get to WrestleMania 22, and Cena is... where were they at? Chicago? Detroit?
They're in Chicago, yeah. They're in Chicago. Obviously, Cena's entrance has the Chicago gang mob theme with Punk on the side of the car. Just, Kevin, Mania in Chicago, that's probably the worst possible spot for WrestleMania in hindsight. You got a smart town, and then they're booing Cena all night. You can't wrestle. It's like Cena sucks. Like it was just, it was weird, because that crowd, that's the crowd who really set the tone for the next really 9 years until 2015. That just became narrative. Cena can't wrestle. Cena's one-dimensional. Cena's just a bland cookie cutter babyface. We want something fresh. Even though Triple H has been shoved down our throats for several years, been holding the big gold belt for near enough 3 straight years, we want Triple H to win. Like, Kevin, you're ridiculous, bro.
Oh yeah, I watched it back. Like when I was a kid, I watched this. WrestleMania 22 is one of my favorite WrestleManias. I remember watching this vividly. Myself personally, I wasn't a big John Cena guy growing up. I wanted Triple H to win, and that was just because I genuinely liked Triple H. I just loved Triple H growing up. I don't know what it was about him. I probably shouldn't have liked Triple H considering all the content he did in the Attitude Era and the Ruthless Aggression Era, hanging out, the Katie Vick stuff. But I digress. Somehow a young me throughout all those odd segments was a fan of Triple H. And I remember, but I wasn't like, oh my God, I hate Cena for winning. Like, I didn't really care. It's like, it's wrestling. Okay, whatever. But some people got so upset, so angry. It was like, it became cool to buy a ticket. And like you said, Chicago set the tone. It became cool to buy a ticket, drive to an arena, just not care about anything else on the show. Just whatever John Cena's out there to boo. To make sure that everyone watching at home knew that you hated John Cena. And it was like, made like Cena. The backlash wasn't there yet all the way until WrestleMania 22 on the grand stage. You got millions of people watching. This is WrestleMania. It's a show of shows. People are watching this and they're like, "Oh, I hate John Cena too. I want to boo him. I want to do that. That's cool." WWE, Vince McMahon, they want us to cheer him because they want him to be the babyface, but I don't want that. I want to boo him. And it was like you said, the biggest possible stage. And then like the idea is planted, then yeah, I don't even know. It just then
and then once the idea is planted by these angry Attitude Era fans from Chicago, once the idea is planted from them in the minds of all the fans, then when you go to God knows, I mean, you go to Davenport, Iowa, and you do an episode of Raw there, then the crowd's gonna go, "Oh, I saw a WrestleMania in Chicago. They booed in. That looked pretty fun. I'm gonna boo Cena as well," and that became the thing. And
right.
really, that was the case for the best part of the next 8 years. It was just crowd after crowd. You'd have your audience who enjoyed Cena, kids, families, some young adults, some adult males. They'd really enjoy Cena, and then you have the crowd. You can't wrestle, Cena sucks, etc., etc. We want something else. We want something fresh. And really, what I want to talk about now, I guess first we need to touch on One Night Stand 06. I think that we have to talk about that. The fact that was the peak example of psychotic, nutcase ECW fans. These just, these New Yorkers who are just off their nut, who love violent, die-hard, shoot wrestling, booing Cena, and I legitimately thought someone would jump the guardrail and assault him. Like, it was crazy,
Yeah, looking back at it in hindsight, I'll ask you this question. Did WWE make the right move by having John Cena, like, headline this card? Like, yes, I know he headlined against RVD, who is ECW. Like, you think ECW, you think RVD. He is the franchise. He made ECW, put it on the map. But still, even that, people are going to hate John Cena. And it's not a good look when you have a national pay-per-view. And like the whole idea of ECW on top of that is national pay-per-view. But the whole idea of ECW is that it's different than WWE. You take the guy that is WWE, true and told, and everything in between. He is WWE. You put him in there in that environment. Probably wasn't the best move in hindsight, right?
No, I mean, we talk about Mania in Chicago set the tone and made fans, especially the adult male audience, think that was the cool thing to do, just boo Cena because he's not what we want. It took that idea and took it to the nth degree, because you go from that where there was a majority in Chicago who are like, yeah, we'll boo Cena, it's cool, whatever. Then you go to One Night Stand in front of a couple thousand nutcases, and then if Cena wins, we riot, boo. Like, Cena will throw his shirt into the crowd, they throw it back. They happen about 4 different times. You've got the crowd just relishing and just hating Cena.
Some of the most vulgar chants you'll ever hear, too, from a crowd were directed at Cena that night.
Kevin, do you think any wrestler nowadays could step into what Cena did on that night and actually survive? Like, they'd have genuine, severe mental health issues after doing that.
No way.
I'm adamant.
Nobody could. Like, the top guy, Roman Reigns, could. I think the only guy that could do it, I could say this with confidence, would be Drew McIntyre. McIntyre would look at it and be like, okay, you guys want to hate me? And he would go with it and have fun with it. He's probably like, that's the only name that comes to mind. Like, even Randy Orton would get flustered. Randy Orton would be like, fuck this. I don't want to do this anymore. Flip the bird, walk out the ring, go piss in some woman's bag backstage.
Well, you remember, I mean, Orton competed at that show at One Night Stand 06. It was a match with Angle, didn't he? And it was like a 13-minute terrible match. The crowd was just booing the whole thing. No one wanted to see it because it's ECW One Night Stand. You've got Angle versus Orton. But anyway,
Kurt Angle talked about that match on his podcast recently. I listened to it. And he said what I just said. Orton was flustered. Orton didn't want to do the match. He wanted to walk out.
Yeah, it's just, bruh. And then to think, think about that nowadays. Imagine Seth Rollins goes into that environment. You've got 5,000, how many people in Hammerstein Ballroom, crazy, psychotic fans, chanting F you, Rollins, go away, you suck, just like, generally vile chants. And then, chanting, like, booing you the whole time. Rollins would delete his Twitter and then make a cryptic Instagram story post and deactivate from social media for a month. Yeah. And that's what most wrestlers would do because it was just that much. But Cena, like the champion he is, like the resilient individual he is, puts a brave face on, goes out for 30-odd minutes, has a 20-minute match with RVD, deals with the crowd beforehand and after the match, gets out of the arena alive, lives to tell the tale, and in my opinion, his style grew a bunch from that. Yeah, he lost the match and he was booed exponentially, but the fact that he did that, I respect immensely.
And he put over RVD. Let's not forget about that too. People say Cena didn't put people over. He put over RVD, who was like a lifetime mid-carder in WWE up until this point. And the WWE just strapped the rocket to RVD, and RVD fumbled that. That's a podcast for another day.
Yeah.
But he put over RVD, and it became like, yeah, the you can't wrestle thing. And it's like, but Cena and RVD, they killed it. They had a good match. Like, what more could you want? They had a good in-ring work rate match. Like, you go back and watch that match. That stands the test of time. That's a match that you could see happening in 2021.
I hate that whole Cena can't wrestle thing. I really do. Because, yeah, that was the cool narrative. He only does 5 moves. All he does is his quote-unquote Hulk up at the end, or he does his 5 moves of doom. And to that I say, every time WWE has a guy whose position is the top guy that's how it goes. In 2014, in 2013-14, when Daniel Bryan was positioned as that guy, he'd be literally the exact same, beating up the whole match and do a flurry with some kicks, the roundhouse yes kicks, running knee, and he'd do about 5 moves as well. But just because the audience knows that Cena doesn't know thousands of fake submission moves, he can't wrestle. Ignore the fact that he has this great match with RVD. He's had great matches with, you take your pick. Edge, Shawn Michaels, Angle, you name him. List goes on and on and on. Seems like great matches all of them, but I know that he doesn't know as many fake moves as guys like Kurt Angle. Therefore, boo. He can't wrestle. I'm going to boo him out of the building. Yeah. It's like, I don't love that mentality.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I don't like it either. We'll talk about that later on, though, in a second podcast.
Yes, we will.
So from this one night stand 06, then he moves into a program with Edge that lasted like pretty much the rest of 2006, just about. I mean, I think you could argue that this is Cena's best rivalry. I think Edge is Cena's best opponent. Maybe not in ring, but his best opponent for storytelling and from character development and all that standpoint. So we got some great segments out of this. I mean, we got Edge slapping Cena's dad. Like that's just, it doesn't get any better than that. You got Cena losing the belt in his hometown and then beating Edge in Edge's hometown. Just some great iconic matches, iconic moments that came from this 06 rivalry with Edge. And would you say this is Cena's best rivalry, or where do you think it ranks amongst his best?
Oh, good question. I'd say it's his best. I think if you've watched the WWE Untold on Edge and Cena, particularly, they really focused in on that match that they had Unforgiven, but that Untold really told this story brilliantly. It was 40 minutes. Yeah, I haven't seen it. Go check it out. It's genuinely worth a look.
Yeah.
It's on the WWE Network's best, specials. You got Edge talking about how he was fully cognizant of the fact that Cena was this generation's Hogan. He was going to be pushed as such, and Edge wanted to be the best possible heel foil for that. Edge was going to do everything he could to get booed, get negative reactions, make the crowd cheer when Cena punches him. Edge got the business. He understood his goal is to get booed. He's going to do everything he can to get booed, get a negative reaction, so the babyface gets a positive reaction. Wow, what a concept, Kevin. So, Edge.
Can I say this real quick while we're on this?
Yeah.
So, this is the difference with Edge and Punk. People compare it because people say, oh, those are Cena's best rivalries, best opponents. I fully agree. Edge had the mindset of Cena is above me, and I'm going to latch to that guy, and I'm going to make a living off of being that guy's opponent, be that guy's punching bag. Where Punk wanted to be better than Cena, and that's okay. I credit the ambition. But I think Edge was smart enough to realize, look, I can make a lot of money being next to this guy.
Exactly. Edge had the nous, It wasn't as selfish, I guess. And then, when it comes to Edge, that rivalry, the stuff with Edge visiting Cena's hometown, it's the way they talk about that on the WWE Untold, we got Cena's dad confronting Edge in the house or whatever, and Cena's dad is reading and performing lines as though it's like a Shakespeare play, and then Vince read it, or Vince heard it when the footage got back to Connecticut or wherever they were for Raw, and Vince is like, oh, this is terrible, damn it, scrap it, no, cut the audio, Edge, Edge, you voice over this in the ring. That's terrible. Like Vince was pissed. Like Cena's acting was awful, and then Edge had to voice over it in the ring. But yeah, anyway. God.
Jeez.
Just awful. Like imagine Vince. Like this is 06 Vince, a guy who's having matches with God. He's saying the N word at pay-per-views. Like this is Vince at his all-time worst. And you get shown this footage of Edge and later beating up Cena's dad, and Cena's dad's like performing lines as though it's a 17th century Shakespearean monologue. And then Edge slaps him, and then Vince gets the footage 2 hours later, and he's like irate. He's pissed. Oh damn it! Oh, get this off my tongue! Damn it, Edge! Vote's over this in the ring. This is crap. Damn it! Like, right. That's great.
So with that being said, thank you there, Vince. I appreciate that, Aussie Vince. With that being said, we'll talk about Cena's 07. So we go into WrestleMania 23, and it was supposed to be Cena Triple H. Triple H gets hurt. We're gonna get part 2 of that for whatever reason.
I don't know why, but anyway.
Yeah. So then we get, I think, probably the better match in hindsight. I think most people would agree, the better option. We get Cena versus Shawn Michaels, and again, we're in Detroit. We get an iconic Cena entrance, him driving the Mustang into the arena, just absolutely iconic. If you haven't seen this entrance, go back and find it. Again, you get Shawn Michaels being cheered. You get Cena being booed. You get the "You Can't Wrestle" chants. You get the, "Let's go Cena. Cena sucks." Even though Cena's getting booed and Shawn is getting cheered, it was still evident that people didn't really care of the outcome. They just didn't they wanted anything but the belt to be on Cena. And that's when you know you got him. Like this was the assurance when they put Cena in the main event again at WrestleMania 23, back-to-back WrestleMania main events. This was the assurance that Cena was going to be the top guy for the next decade. And because you have, like I said, people just wanted Cena to lose. They didn't care if it was Shawn Michaels. They didn't care if it was Triple H. They didn't care if it was Booker T. They didn't care if it was Jerry Lawler. Hell, if it was Michael Cole. They didn't care. They wanted Cena to lose. And again, another good match in ring. Cena, Shawn Michaels, WrestleMania 23. It was a good match. Cena still gets the "You Can't Wrestle" chance for whatever reason. I'll never understand it.
Yes, I mean, there was that. Mania 23, awesome show. I mean, the matchups they did at that show were sick. I mean, Batista, Taker, brilliant world title match. And you have Cena, Michaels, the WWE title. Excellent show. Really good WrestleMania. In a time period in 07 where this wasn't the Benoit thing yet. This wasn't really the steroid, not scandal, but the suspensions and the wellness policy violation. That wasn't just yet. But 07 turned into a challenging time. This early 07 period, I mean, Undertaker winning the Rumble was cool, but just generally the product was all right. It'd been kind of being on a little bit of a downtick since I'd say 05. Personally speaking, that's what I think. Obviously people say 06 is great because of Cena and Edge and whatnot, but yeah, the product isn't in the best state in my opinion, at least. And then you get this, Cena's awesome. They have the great match with Michaels, and then you fast forward, what was it? 3 weeks?
Hold on. I gotta push back. WrestleMania 23, early 07. This is one of the hottest time periods in wrestling history.
You reckon? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you got Trump. You got Trump and Vince.
That's just hilarious. That's hilarious.
Like the Battle of the Billionaires. Everybody was talking about this. Everybody. I remember this like it was yesterday. Literally, like little kids at lunch with me. I was like 6th grade. We're talking about Donald Trump on WWE at the lunch table at recess. Like it was. Yeah, 07 was big time, man.
I'll defend my take by saying the main reason I'm by that is I reminisce on 06 as I mentioned, the year Vince McMahon was beating God. You got DX dropping filth on the Spirit Squad. You got Vince McMahon using the N-word. I tend to focus on kind of a bit more the negative of 06 and seeing getting booed most of the year. So that kind of, I guess, influences how I see the time period. That makes sense. So yeah, I'll admit defeat on that take and then move on to the next one. Cena and Michaels on Raw in April of 07, Kevin.
I need to say something real quick before we get destroyed. The first half of 07 was great. Obviously, 2007 is overall the darkest year in wrestling history, but the first half of 07 was really good.
Yeah, definitely. And then second half hidden was hell. But anyway, Cena and Michaels on Raw. This better than their Mania match, I'd say. And yeah, I mean, this was the crowd hating Cena more. This is the UK fans. Obviously, the crowd who watched every PWG show, the crowd who watched Bryan Danielson's entrances to Final Countdown at ROH Guerrillas of Destiny 2006. The crowd have seen all these great in-ring clashes and
slander.
Oh god, dude! Bro, these people have seen everything. So you see Cena, a legitimate star, coming out there having a match, And of course, you're going to boo him, despite the fact this was an incredible hour-long Iron Man match. It wasn't an Iron Man match. It was an hour-long match. Just forget that. It was just boo, boo, Cena sucks, you can't wrestle. Just like, bro,
Yes,
fam. Really, fam. Like, bro.
Yes, sir. And then, in order to save your blood pressure, we'll fast forward to late 07, where Cena tears his pec, famously. And it's like, oh, Cena's going to be out 7 to 9 months. Everybody rejoices on the internet. All the people that hate John Cena, they're rejoicing. Little kids are crying because Cena's out. But we'll focus on the smart crowd. They're like, oh my God, we're going to have a WrestleMania without Cena. Oh my God, oh my God. And then what happens at Royal Rumble 2008?
What? Wait a minute! Like, just...
Can I let me talk about this one from personal experience. So, I was young at the time, so I couldn't stay up late to watch the rest of the pay-per-view. My parents ordered a Royal Rumble for me because I always got Royal Rumble every year. And I had to go to bed before the Royal Rumble match starts. So I don't know what happened. I avoided all spoilers. I purposely did not go on my phone. I didn't go on my computer at all because I did not want to see any spoilers. I get home from school. I'm walking inside. I see my neighbor. And my neighbor shouts at me, "Hey, Kevin, John Cena won the Royal Rumble." And I was like, "Are you kidding me, bro? Like, are you kidding me?" And he's like dancing, like doing the "You Can't See Me." John Cena won. And I'm just like, bro, really? Like, I avoided spoilers all day for this. And I'm about to get home and watch it. And you ruin it like 10 seconds before I get in my house. Like,
that's brutal.
It was so upsetting. But I was shocked. I was like, what? John Cena won the Royal Rumble? What do you mean John Cena? Like, I didn't really believe him either. I was like, what do you mean John Cena won the Royal Rumble? John Cena hasn't been around in like months. He's hurt. He's gonna be out for a whole year. Then I go watch it, and then iconic moment. Just Cena's return, Royal Rumble 2008, number 30. The music hits. The Madison Square Garden crowd, they cheered for a second. They forgot they were supposed to boo him, and then they remembered, oh, wait, we're supposed to boo him. We're supposed to be cool. So it's a pretty fascinating moment to go back and watch.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I mean, I was going to quickly focus on that. This is the torn pec injury. Like, just to give some context with that one, the time frame is usually it's 6 months at absolute best for a recovery and upwards of a year. For a torn pec, it's a pretty gross injury. I mean, your pec muscle it tears. Like, gross injury. But Cena comes back, so he injures it at the very beginning of October 07, and he's back mid to late January, so 3.5 months. Crazy. For an injury that some people take a year to heal from, and even then, if maybe you're a bit older, that can take over a year. You know, like, absolutely incredible. Like that's one of those like recoveries, which it's just like this guy's different. You know, that is unbelievable. 3.5 months for an injury that is at best for any normal person 6 months. Like, that's ridiculous. Right.
Ridiculous, bro.
Well, that is ridiculous, bro. But yeah, so Cena wins the Rumble. He has that face-off with your boy, Triple H, and eventually gets the win. And Kevin, walk us through this. You got a big-time WrestleMania 24 match with Triple H, Cena, and another one of your boys, Randy Orton. Walk us through that one.
Oh, I was in the building for this, as most of you already know. I was in the building for this WrestleMania 24 match. I thought at the time, especially, and in hindsight, I thought it was a waste of Cena's return. Like, you have Cena have this epic return. He comes back in 3 months from a really serious injury, and you put him in a triple threat match on the undercard of WrestleMania. Like, if there was ever a time to have John Cena and Randy Orton one-on-one be a main event marquee WrestleMania match, 2008 was the time. And they didn't pull the trigger. Like, for some reason, you got Triple H in there. You got him shoehorned. This match just doesn't fit. Like, you look at WrestleMania 24, you got Floyd Mayweather, Big Show, Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair, Flair's last match, a great Money in the Bank match where your boy Punk wins, main event,
Edge and Tiger.
Yeah, main event, Undertaker, Edge, and then it's just somewhere on the undercard. It's just, oh wait, there's a triple threat match between 3 of the biggest stars of this era, Cena, Triple H, and Orton, and nobody remembers it. Nobody talks about it. Like I said, a waste of Cena's return.
Yeah, legit. It's always the body Randy Orton. Like, Randy Orton's done this. People actually talk about it. Like, you've seen a Triple H, like the match I should have done a year before at WrestleMania 24. People are talking about that, but you throw bloody Randy Orton in there, no one cares. There's been the wellness policy debacle already. He's been, taking dumps in people's bags. He's a backstage menace, abusing writers allegedly. And it's just it's an absolute mess. So you have this. Cena loses. I believe Orton won with the punt, didn't he? So
Oh my god.
yeah, your favorite wrestler won, pal.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was cheering for Triple H in the audience that night.
Wow.
I was a menace, I guess. I was the cool kid that loved the Attitude Era guy. Yeah,
That's
very odd. Just a very odd choice to have this match. I'll never understand it. Like why? Yeah. So then I guess we'll transition to the PG era. Unless there's anything else you want to say about 08.
not really. I mean, I guess it's fair to move on to the PG era there, John.
Yeah. So I would say late 08, early 09, WWE begins the initiative to go PG. All their programming is going to be PG. No more TV 14. Family-friendly, kid-friendly shows. And John Cena, rightfully so, is made the face of this. And wrestling changed forever after this. We're still feeling the ripple effects of this move from TV 14 to PG. We got Linda McMahon going to Congress in America. Just really an interesting time. You got post-Benoit tragedy. You got steroid allegations. You got like Randy Orton, Edge, just a bunch of big names coming up in steroid allegations. Really an interesting time. And then, the stigma of a wrestler, people looking at wrestlers like, oh, they're meatheads that kill their wives and kids. So what did Vince do? And I don't blame him. A lot of people blame WWE for doing this, but they make Cena this ever-loving guy that dances with women that have cancer and hugs babies and has Rise Above Hate towels, does motivational speeches every week. That's really what Cena became. He became like Tony Robbins on screen every single week on Raw. He just became an inspiration to children and families, and it was the right call. Absolutely. After everything that happened in 07 and 08, WWE had to do it.
Well, really what I want to stick on with this is that there was no one else at this time. Jeff Hardy was popular, for sure, but considering his kind of past and everything that ended up happening with him, that was not the option to go with as far as like the long-term top guy he's the Tony Robbins. Like, that's not what Jeff Hardy is. Jeff Hardy's a guy who's going to get people, to react because he's just a cool guy who'll stick to himself. Jeff Hardy wasn't that guy. Cena was that poster child. Like, I remember watching the interview with Larry King after the Benoit tragedy. Vince chose Jericho and Cena to represent WWE as far as, taking the brunt of the Benoit thing and, being the faces of, we're not about this. We're about, being positive and all that kind of stuff. And Cena was brilliant. He handled the interview brilliantly. Larry King was throwing some pretty sly kind of comments in there, some snarky remarks about wrestling. Cena and Jericho handled it brilliantly. And, I mean, that really showed, I guess, Vince's trust in Cena. Cena could be that, I guess, face for wrestling, even through that kind of challenging period, through late 07, 08, into 09. Like, Cena was that guy. So, in reality, he was made to do it. Like, Kevin, could you picture anyone else being in that role? Like who else around this time period, who the internet were desperate to see, could have possibly been, like, that face? Like, what, you want to say Ted DiBiase Jr. being the face of the company? Like,
Cody Rhodes, pal.
Yeah, dashing Cody Rhodes is going on Larry King interviews defending WWE post Benoit. Like, get out of here, dude. Just horrendous, bro. Yeah. Horrendous. You wanted Dolph Ziggler being like, hey, guys, that's Rollins. I can't do the Ziggler. Pull this off. As in Ziggler yelling at Larry King to pull this off in the interview.
Have been me.
Please don't use that in the context of Benoit, please. Nonetheless. Jesus.
Yeah,
nonetheless, Cena was the poster child. He was the face. And really, Kevin, I don't know anyone else just in wrestling who could have done that at that time.
Yeah, I mean, what, you can have Randy Orton, the guy that doesn't like taking pictures with fans, just ask fans for cigarettes, stares at women's boobs. Like, you can have that guy as the face of the
Can we do a quick little skit? You be Larry King pressing me about the Benoit situation, WWE being horrible, and I'll be Randy Orton. Okay?
All right. So, Randy, are all wrestlers on steroids? Randy, are you on steroids? Do you think that you could ever see yourself going into a roid rage and maybe harming yourself or, God forbid, one of your loved ones?
Larry, I took a dump in a rider's bag. Okay, don't you dare question my WWE or my colleagues. I would never, ever go into a roid rage. And then you'd probably, if you're Larry King, say something like, well, what about your wellness policy place of France, Randy? Like,
Oh
just,
my god.
God. And Randy Orton's like, Larry, I'm going to RKO you on this table, and you'll be out cold.
Oh
From there, I will punt kick you, and then I will take a dump in your personal assistant's bag. Like bro, what is this, bro? Like, anyway. Jesus.
Oh, okay. To transition, I guess we'll keep on the Orton thing. 0809, I had stopped watching wrestling by this point. I was
Why?
in and out.
Why?
Because of the
Why?
infamous John Cena and Randy Orton feud. Now, this is a very specific feud that if you were like 5 years old when this feud happened, this is like your favorite wrestling feud ever. You love everything about it. But if you're like 8 years old and up and you watch this Cena Orton feud play out every single week, you hate it. It's just one of those things. It is what it is.
But Kevin, you had Superman John Cena against naked 3 years.
Yeah, you got my favorite version of Randy Orton, my penis Randy Orton. I mean, he's out there looking like a penis just with a bald head.
God, I need the legacy beside him. You have Cody Rhodes with no knee pads, all oiled up. You got Ted DiBiase.
Horrible, just awful. Oh my god, awful. Like, yeah, then you have like the famous match they had, the 3 Stages of Hell match, I believe it was. Someone will correct me and point. And
I'll look so we don't get 3 comments being like, well, actually, Kevin, it was the blah blah blah. But yeah, go on, talk about the match.
Well, there was a match. And I remember specifically where Cena's handcuffed to the turnbuckle. You've got like penis Orton just with fumes coming out of his ears, looking like the devil. He's got the kendo stick, and it's just like a PG hardcore match. Like, when I think PG wrestling, this is the match I think of. You got penis Orton with a stick in his hand, whipping Cena violently with his stick in the chest and stomach, and Cena's just taking it, and he's all red. And I'm just like, yeah, this is not entertaining. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to everyone that I offended that was like 5 years old when this match happened, but I just didn't like it. It wasn't for me.
Yeah, because I mean that'd be 60-minute anything goes Iron Man match at bragging rights, and before that you got the Hell in a Cell match at Hell in a Cell about 2 weeks prior. You had their match at the I Quit match at Breaking Point. You had their match at SummerSlam. Like, this thing just went on, and just Cena versus Orton. Oh, Cena wins now. Orton wins now. Cena wins now. Orton. Just, we get they're trying to get their title reign numbers up. We get it. Okay, you can be less obvious about it. Like, we don't need to see naked Orton with oiled up Cody Rhodes hitting Cena with a kendo stick as Cena is like screaming and trying to look all jacked for photo ops. Like, it was just Kevin. I mean, not good. I mean, this drove away a lot of fans. It did make some fans, I guess, some little kids grew up going, "Oh my god, Cena and Orton! Oh my god, guys!" But on the whole, it was just like, bruh, this is Cena and Orton every pay-per-view for 9 years. Like, bruh.
Yeah, they wrestled so many times within the span of like 2007 to 2014. The amount of times that John Cena and Randy Orton wrestled, it's gotta be like, they have to have at least like top 5 for, you talk about opponents that have had the most matches together. Singular opponents that have wrestled the most times. Like Cena Orton.
Kevin, I'll throw this out here. When it comes to Cena and Orton, this is supposedly I guess in WWE's eyes, the big, I guess, rivalry of the era. This is the PG era's 2 top guys, supposedly. And they never had a one-on-one match at WrestleMania. Like, there was triple threat, which they're both involved in, which no one talks about. But they never had a one-on-one match at WrestleMania. Despite the fact that they wrestled like 600 times.
Right, that's a joke of it. They were good enough to headline B pay-per-views. They headlined a SummerSlam or 2. And, they headlined, Royal Rumble 1 year. And then it's like, well, you never did Cena Orton at WrestleMania. I wonder why. You always had Triple H or Shawn Michaels, or you had Edge in there. Like, somebody else was always in there. They never did Cena Edge one-on-one. And that's kind of a shame too.
They did Cena Miz at WrestleMania, but not Cena Orton.
Right. Or Cena Edge.
Oh my god.
Ridiculous.
Because that at WrestleMania 27, just to, I guess, fulfill this narrative, do Cena Orton in the main event, and That way, when Rock attacks Cena, no one's going to care because who cares about Randy Orton? You could have done that. Or you could have done, and then on the undercard, CM Punk beating up The Miz in a shoot fight. Like, I don't know. You've got the Nexus. I'll just do the quick little, I guess, rundown for this. So by this point, you roll into 2010. Cena's been objectively the top guy, really, at this point, for about 5 years, 5 and a tick years. So you roll in, you got NXT's big crop of talent. You got Wade Barrett. You got big stars like Bryan Danielson, big stars like Michael Tarver, big stars like Justin Gabriel, big stars like Wendy's Heath Slater, big stars like Skip Sheffield. They all beat up John Cena to close an episode of Raw, Kevin, and legit, this whole Nexus angle, like, personally, obviously I'll get your thoughts in a moment, but like, you've got these guys all punching Cena. Wade Barrett was the clear star of the group. He was the guy who was most likely to have success in WWE, just if you looked at them just generally. And then you could tell Skip Sheffield would get a push. But then they feud with Cena, Kevin. And it's like, oh, you've got Cena punching Wade Barrett at 5 straight pay-per-views. You've got the 7-on-7 match at SummerSlam, Kevin, which this one's caused just a ton of conjecture about. Did Cena bury the Nexus? Was this Cena's biggest burial ever? Cena didn't put over the future of the company. And I'm like, well, this was your future. This Nexus. Wade Barrett, Barrett's cool, but what about the rest of them? Cena didn't put over Justin Gabriel at SummerSlam. F him, like, Kevin, I mean, what do you think of the Nexus? Like, personally, I thought it was good. Obviously a bit messy with the writing, but just generally, yeah. I mean, what do you think?
I would say of all time, right? It's one of the most controversial decisions when you think about it, like Cena not putting them over in a SummerSlam. But wouldn't you say it's like one of the most controversial wrestling like conspiracies out there?
Okay, it gave the anti-Cena people more fuel to say that he buries people, he holds people down. Cena he's all about himself. He's all about the future of himself and not the actual company. And in reality, I'm like here's how I see it, Kevin. You look at the Nexus. Cena puts over the Nexus. Okay, you want Heath Slater to be your top guy? You want Michael Tarver, Justin Gabriel? You want those guys to be carrying the company for the next 10 years? Like, I get Wade Barrett is the exception. Wade Barrett could have been like a several time like world champion as like a heel. I get it. And Cena beat him and I guess ruined his career, I guess. But was Wade Barrett all that? He was good. Definitely had the look. He was decent at promos, but was Cena beating them at SummerSlam, Kevin, really the end of the world and as dramatic as people made it seem?
Yeah, I don't think it was the end of the world. Like, I've done a video on it. Some other YouTubers have done a video on it. This has been a podcast discussion forever. The anti-Cena guys will insist that Otunga, Justin Gabriel, Heath Slater, Bray Wyatt, all these guys were going to be future stars, especially Wade Barrett. And I look at Wade Barrett, my question always comes down to it. You're in an American company, and we're seeing this with Drew McIntyre now. What I always said about Wade Barrett back then, we're seeing with McIntyre. When McIntyre's like his heavy accent doing his Scottish tales, people laugh at it. You have Wade Barrett out there in a British accent. It's not going to work long term. It could work as like the evil foreign heel. That could work. But you're going to have Wade Barrett out there as a babyface, like screaming in his British accent. Like, it wouldn't work in an American company. It just, it just is what it is. But Cena, he should have put over Nexus. I think he'll never admit it, obviously. But I think everybody else knows. Like, we've seen Edge and Jericho famously discuss this on a podcast where they told Cena that he did the wrong thing. And they were telling him to put them over. And I mean, it is what it is. Like, people complain about it and they make it such a big deal. I don't think it's that big of a deal. And it could have extended Wade Barrett's career. Like, they should have, in hindsight, Cena should have just put them over. It was like, what? You had Super Cena beat, like, what, 4 of the guys in a multi-man match or 3 of the guys at once?
Yeah, the 7-on-7. Yeah, well, like, that one I do agree with. I think for the sake of the angle, Cena should have lost at SummerSlam. Because, I mean, you look at, like, Team WWE, which, Cena was leading. It's like R-Truth, John Morrison, a 60-year-old Bret Hart. You got, Jericho and Edge. And, like, Cena could have absolutely still beaten 4 of the Nexus guys, and Wade Barrett clocks him from behind with a bull hammer or, whatever his finishing move was, the Wasteland or whatever, and just pinned him.
Right.
You know, that he just done that. Like, that wouldn't have really hurt him if Cena still gets his stuff in. Wade Barrett wins, then the credibility of the Nexus, you know, goes up exponentially. But instead, Cena just won. I was like, well, this angle's been going for 4 more months, and the Nexus haven't beaten him once. Like, why should we really care? You know?
That was the thing. Why should you care? You got like corny segments where you have John Cena in a hotel room, spookily looking for Jennifer Hudson's husband, David Otunga, and David Otunga pops out of a closet. Oh, I'm sorry, Cena pops out of a closet. Or like at the door, he's like creepily staring at David Otunga, and you get like he beats up Otunga. We just get these corny segments. You got like CM Punk in a Nexus t-shirt getting beat up by Cena. It's like, I don't know. Like the Nexus, I think gets overrated with hindsight. You look at the crop of talent that was involved with Nexus: Barrett, Bryan, Wyatt. Some of those guys obviously went on to be big stars. But I just don't think it was that big of a deal, man. Honestly, it gets so overblown. It's the one flaw against Cena, though. Like, it's the one time where Cena truly buried people. Because the whole rap on Cena is, oh, he buries young talent. Aside from Wade Barrett and Alex Riley, who did Cena bury? Let's address this. Who did Cena bury aside from those two guys? I'll ask you.
Kevin, I'm the wrong person to ask because I'm vehemently same side as you. People who still look at Cena and be like, he buried a bunch of up-and-coming young time period. Please give me examples of guys who could legitimately have been like real stars, because people are always going to say Cena buried Dolph Ziggler, or Cena buried Rusev, Cena buried Kevin Owens, Cena buried Bray Wyatt. Okay, the Bray Wyatt one's ticky-tacky. WWE's booking buried Bray Wyatt just long Cena thing. The fact that the 30th annual WrestleMania, I mean, we'll talk about this in a minute, but yeah, as far as we've seen buried, I mean, I'd even debate the Alex Riley one. I mean, what was Alex Riley going to do in the company? He was prototype WWE guy 3. Like, we talk about Cena being prototype 1, you know, before. Alex Riley was just prototype white jacked guy with no charisma who wore trunks. What more is there to him? You know, what about that's going to be a legitimate star? So, personally, I'd say the only contentious burial was the Wade Barrett one, and even then, like, questionable.
Okay, can we talk about the Rusev one for a second? Like, I've seen people make the argument, and I think you could argue that Cena buried Rusev, because Rusev realistically, he never was the same after that Cena match. But what was the life expectancy of Rusev's gimmick? His gimmick belonged in 1985. If Rusev came out in a Bulgarian anti-American gimmick and confronted Hulk Hogan, Rusev would have been one of the biggest stars in WWF history. But you put that gimmick in 2015, and you put it against John Cena with his United States Championship red, white, and blue t-shirt, and everybody knows wrestling's fake. What is the life expectancy of Rusev's gimmick? What is Rusev doing now? He's playing video games with Darby Allin on Dynamite on live TV, throwing Ricky Starks into a ping pong machine. What is it? A gumball machine? Like, what the hell is he doing now? Like, God, you know, you could make the argument. I'll listen to it if you want to debate me that Cena buried Rusev. I'll listen to that one.
Rusev came out on a bloody tank at WrestleMania in front of 75,000 people and had a match with John Cena, the biggest star of the last 10 years in the company. I don't care that Cena won the match. I think the whole point of, oh my God, well, Cena won this match, therefore burial. That's not what a burial is, because someone won a match that Vince McMahon wrote up in a creative meeting 3 weeks prior. That's not a burial. Is like when Dean Ambrose was on his way out the door and they're like, oh, we're going to have you lose and job out to Nia Jax.
Yeah. We're
going to have EC3, hasn't been on TV in 9 months, just beat you over and over on Raw. That's a burial. Having Rusev come out in a tank with Lana in front of 75,000 people and have a good 15-minute match for the US title with Cena, how is that a burial? Same with Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt has this big epic storyline with Cena. Oh, I'm going to end Cena's legacy. I'm going to, you know, put the nail in his coffin, so to speak. I'm going to end Cena. They do the big, you know, video package to Legacy. 75,000 people at WrestleMania 30. Cena wins the match. And, you know, like, Kevin,
the other side of the argument for Rusev would be, well, Cena could have done a lot better at WrestleMania 31 than wrestle Rusev. Like, you could argue that Rusev is not on Cena's level, and they should have even had the match.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm on the side.
He was trying to have a match and put him over. Like, I don't know.
I'm on the side of Cena didn't bury very many people. I mean, who else gets argued? Like you said, Ziggler. Let's debunk the Ziggler one real quick. In 2021, Dolph Ziggler is still cashing checks from Vince McMahon. All right. Bottom line, like that was what 2012 when Cena beat Ziggler in a cage match after Ziggler had him down and out, and Big E interfered, and AJ Lee interfered, and my mom interfered, and Randy Orton's girlfriend interfered. Cena beat Ziggler when he was down, Cena was down and out, did the whole Super Cena crap. Ziggler's still cashing checks 9 years later. It's okay. Everything's fine. Ziggler's still getting paid handsomely. He's getting paid $500,000 a year to come out and scream, "It should have been me," with what's his name, Bobby Roode, with his porn stash.
How did Cena negatively alter Dolph Ziggler's career timeline? When Dolph Ziggler's sick fantasy? What was the company gonna be if he didn't quote unquote get buried by Cena? You have Dolph Ziggler coming out calling out Dwayne Johnson for the big match at WrestleMania 29. You have Dolph Ziggler having a 400-day WWE title run. What do you think that's going to do to your viewing audience? Obviously, you people who watch wrestling for their own sick satisfaction will enjoy that, and they'll go through a few pairs of underwear watching it. But outside of that, what's the general casual audience going to think? You turn on watching Dolph Ziggler calling out Dwayne Johnson. You think the Rock's going to ever come back to wrestling if that's what we get? Like, honestly, and then Kevin, another one. I've seen people say, "I've seen buried R-Truth." I'm like, I'm sorry, what? I've seen this one. So Cena wouldn't put over R-Truth at Capital Punishment in 2011. Bro. Cena didn't put over R-Truth in the feud against Awesome Truth. Like, bro. I'm sorry. R-Truth's gimmick is he's a lower card comedy gimmick. And the fact that Cena, the top guy, Hulk Hogan of this era, didn't lose to that guy. Who cares? You didn't see people saying Hulk Hogan buried Coco Beware, but now Cena wins the match against R-Truth. Oh, Cena buried him.
Bro,
like, just stop.
And then the Kevin Owens one. Look, Kevin Owens beat John Cena in his first pay-per-view, his pay-per-view debut in WWE.
That is ridiculous, bro.
He beat John Cena clean in the middle of the ring, shoulders to the mat, 1, 2, 3. You're gonna say Kevin Owens? Come on, like, bro. Kevin Owens is still cashing checks. Kevin Owens is still having main event pay-per-view matches. Whenever WWE needs somebody to main event a pay-per-view, they pluck Kevin Owens in. So he's still doing well for himself.
He's stealing moves of like the greatest wrestlers ever. Like, just, legit. Oh god, yeah, wow.
I hate the Cena buried this guy. I hate that narrative. I really it bothers me.
Yeah, the only ones you know, like Wade Barrett, questionably, but even then you debunked that before, and then that's really it. I mean, because the guys Cena was beating in these matches, they have ceilings. Like, people online and on Twitter can make it seem as though Dolph Ziggler, if he never lost to Cena, was going to be some big-time mainstream star, but it's just cap. Like, he wasn't. Like Cena, Ziggler got the match with Cena, Rusev got the match with Cena, Wyatt got the match with Cena, or maybe Bray a bit less, but like Owens got the match with Cena, and they always had ceilings. They're always good upper mid-card wrestlers. They're not the guys, you know? They're not the guys who you're going to build the next 10 years of your company around. You're not going to have Dolph Ziggler going on Larry King defending WWE after a big tragedy. You're not going to have that. You're not going to have Dolph Ziggler being like, just Larry King's like, so Dolph, all wrestlers are roid rage meatheads who kill their wives. What do you make about that? I deserve better. I pull this off every week. I'm the best in the world. Like, bro, you're not going to have that. Like, just get out of here.
All right, let's move on for this topic before we go even more off the rails. All right, so but that's, well, I guess going off the rails. Here we go. It's 2011 now. We're fresh off of Cena burying the Nexus, ruining them forever. God. And here we go. What happens now? In just you talk about it because I'm not even gonna set the table. I'll just let you talk and I'll chime in when I feel it's necessary.
Yeah, so Cena's just finished dropping 150 chairs on Wade Barrett to close 2010 at TLC, and then Cena finishes his burial of Wade Barrett and the Nexus. So Cena finishes that, and he moves into 2011, where we get a masterful program and storyline with John Cena and The Miz in the main event of WrestleMania 27. This is something which I know you've been very open about your disdain for many a time. You've got The Miz coming out, pushing pull floats that say, I'm awesome. You've got Miz in the main event of WrestleMania having a match with Cena. This match, if you had this in the middle of an episode of Raw in 2011, people wouldn't bat an eyelid. But instead, this is the main event of WrestleMania. You've got The Rock out there. The Rock hits a rock bottom on Cena. The referee's just looking at it like, oh, okay. and then Miz just pins Cena. And yeah, Kevin, do you want to chime in anything on this one, or do you want to just
I'll be objective for 30 seconds because I'm not even gonna go on the Miz rant. I'm done.
Okay.
So
yeah,
if you want to hear a Miz rant, I have like 100 million of them on my channel. Just check them out. I said before that 08 was the year to have Cena Orton main event WrestleMania. I take that back. 2011 was the year to have Cena Orton one-on-one main event WrestleMania. If there was ever a year to do it, it was 2011. And that's all I'll say. I'll leave you with that.
Yeah, that's a point. I mean, because I've made this case a bunch. I'll just rush over it really quickly. I mean, you could have done Cena and Punk in that Money in the Bank storyline at WrestleMania. So Punk gets his main event because, I mean, Punk compared to Rock style-wise is nowhere near him. So it would have still worked out that when Rock interferes and costs Cena, it would have worked. But at the same time, that would have taken away the magic of Money in the Bank. And I think everything about that Money in the Bank build and match should have been left as is. And I think the fact that you had Miz here, Miz was just a guy for beat. That's all he was. I mean, Miz was just a guy. There's nothing special about Mike Mizanin. He's just a mid-carder. So, yeah, that's the thing there. Cena beats Miz. I guess we move on with the rest of 2011 now.
Yeah, now it's your favorite time. I'll let you take it. The Cena feud.
Yep, the Summer of Punk. This one, I made a video on about 2 weeks ago about how, you've been lied to about this time period. I think what I want to objectively say is that this was a great time period as far as giving us, I guess, edgy wrestling segments for the wrestling audience to sink their teeth into. Because, let's be real with this, Kevin. Cena's run as top guy, it was easy for young kids and, soccer mums and all these people to sink their teeth into and really enjoy watching Cena beat Miz or watching Cena beat Wade Barrett. But for much of the wrestling audience who love tried and true indie shoot wrestling, who love watching wrestlers who know more moves than you can count, having opportunities in WWE, it wasn't the best time to be a fan. You have Cena for a year and a half, 2 years, beating everybody like Randy Orton, Miz, Barrett, etc. So when CM Punk comes along and says, I'm the voice of the voiceless, this company will be better when Vince McMahon's dead, and then be taken over by his idiotic daughter and his doofus son-in-law, the rest of his stupid family, I'm the best on this microphone, in this ring, even a commentary. Like, if Punk come along being like, I worked on the indies, I'm better than everyone, that made a bunch of fans be like, oh, hello, this is something different. Because, Kevin, we'd seen the anti-Cena bit done before. This wasn't the first anti-Cena bit, but this was the most real the anti-Cena thing ever got. It was the first time the anti-Cena thing ever got this real, and it created a buzz. It created a spark. Money in the Bank did really good pay-per-view buys that year. That's objective, and yeah, just generally fun time period. What do you think?
Yeah, honestly, you could make the case that Punk was John Cena's best feud. I would listen to it. It's 100% debatable. For me, it's always going to be Edge or AJ Styles. I put them 1-2. But this Punk, it was great. It was good stuff. This guy kind of got me back into wrestling. And then you had Kevin Nash like tearing his quad and Triple H pedigreeing Punk, and I was gone again.
Don't stop me.
Yeah, then I was gone again. But yeah, this was a great time to be a wrestling fan. Another era of Cena. This was like you said, the anti-Cena stuff turned up to a million notches. But really, this is more about Punk than it is about Cena. So I'll just say this: Money in the Bank 2011 5-star match, unbelievable. And then what we got after that was interesting, where Vince is firing John Cena, and Vince is firing John Cena. And then you got like Cena and Punk both being champions with their toy belts, and yeah, not much else really notable about 2011. I think now it's time to go to 2012. Really?
Yeah, because I think the Cena, that's why I mentioned after the Money in the Bank stuff. I mean, Cena was, where does Cena rank in this shuffle? Because WWE in this time period, the main event scene just, Del Rio was given the belt, even though he was like an afterthought. The main event was Triple H as there's like the COO who everyone hated. So we had babyface COO Triple H. Kevin Nash was there, I guess, being buddies and then enemies of Triple H randomly, which we just had to see. CM Punk, who was supposedly the hottest guy at the time, reaction-wise, was just thrown into the scuffle somewhere. Cena was just the guy who was just in there. And then you had Awesome Truth running around. It was a mess. It was a hot mess. So you finish that. Cena rounds out 2011. He doesn't even compete at TLC 2011. And then we get to 2012, Kevin. A bit of embrace the hate, and then once in a lifetime. Where do you want to begin with this?
Yeah, let me just say, this is what happened in 2011. It was like Vince McMahon and all the people in charge. They were just like, all right, we're gonna tread water until we get to Cena Rock. We'll let Punk run around with his belt, call himself the best in the world. We'll shut him up, stop him from complaining.
They didn't even do that.
They didn't even
do that.
Yeah, they put the belt on him in November, and it was like, oh, we'll just let him.
Oh yeah,
we'll tread water. Right. Then they do the Cena Miz crap. I'm not even gonna talk about that. The Cena Miz R-Truth Rock stuff. There's nothing really there to talk about. You got the greatest of all time in the ring with a microphone in his hand, and the New York crowd is chanting for Zack Ryder. I'm gonna give myself a heart attack talking about this.
Oh my god!
I'll skip all the embrace the hate crap. You got, if you really want to go back and see it, if you really want to go back and relive Zack Ryder in a wheelchair getting thrown off a stage by Kane while Cena's in the ring holding hands with AJ Lee, be my guest, but I will not relive that. I'm not into it. So let's talk about Cena Rock.
I want to just run over. I want to bluntly describe what Embrace the Hate was. Embrace the Hate was a 7-foot tall, 300-pound man in a big, scary red mask telling Cena to embrace the hate as Zack Ryder was being pushed off the stage, already in a neck brace in a wheelchair, being pushed off the stage to his death. You had Cena making out with Eve Torres just so Zack Ryder could be heartbroken. You had Kane pulling Cena under rings and putting him into the depths of hell. Then you had Cena having a count out with Kane at the Rumble, and then an ambulance match at the Chamber, and the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view ends with ambulance sirens playing as Cena drives off with Kane. And just, Kevin, I remember watching this as an 8-year-old thinking, like, what am I watching? Like at that time, I wanted to see Cena Rock more than anything because that was like the big match, and then you just had this just fill of crap in the way. But anyway, moving on.
Yes, please.
Once in a lifetime, Kevin, walk us through this.
Once in a lifetime, Miami, Florida, The Rock's hometown. WrestleMania 28, the biggest WrestleMania since this WrestleMania. There's nothing has topped this. John Cena Rock, once in a lifetime. This was legitimately like you thought, okay, this is The Rock's final match. The Rock will never wrestle again, and then we know what happened after that. But at the time, you thought The Rock will never wrestle again. This is it. This is The Rock making his triumphant return. He's doing what he said he would always do, come back home. The biggest star of WWE today versus the biggest star from yesterday, going at it. It was like, wow, lightning in a bottle. Goosebumps. It's one of those things that you remember exactly where you were when you watched it. I remember just sitting home eating pizza watching this. You got the WrestleMania 28. The show starts with Daniel Bryan and Sheamus, and my dad is like yelling at me in Spanish about why I made him spend $60 on a pay-per-view that had a match end in 13 seconds. And then we get Punk and Jericho, where Jericho's like pouring alcohol on Punk in the promo package on the build-up. Jericho's talking about Punk's father, how his father was an alcoholic. We got through all that stuff. We got Triple H and Shawn Michaels and Undertaker crying. Then we finally get there.
Telling about the great match with Kelly and Maria Menounos against Beth Phoenix and Eve.
Oh, yeah,
can't forget that.
That's another one where I got yelled at for asking for this pay-per-view.
Or when Cody Rhodes lost to the Big Show. Big Show had his WrestleMania moment. Shoot his WrestleMania record up to 3 wins, 8 losses, pal. Like,
oh god, yeah.
And you're having a 10-minute match with Kane on the second match of the show.
Yeah, so we finally limp ahead to the finish line, and we got John Cena walking down to the ring, being played to the ring by MGK. You got The Rock coming down to the ring, and it's like, wow, this is like Mayweather Pacquiao. This is Tyson, Ali Foreman. Just crazy. Like, this is the biggest match, arguably, in WWE history, right here. It was unbelievable. Just an unbelievable environment. And talk to us.
Oh my, yeah. There's nothing really has been like this. Like, I remember I made the video on this, like the magic that was like once in a lifetime. I think the opening line I use is like, wrestling's not about good matches, it's about dream matches, which I think's really, this proves it more than anything. This was never going to be a bell-to-bell classic, but it was the spectacle of it. It was the grandeur. It was the entertainment of it all. It was Rock visiting Boston, throwing Cena garden gnomes into the river. It was Rock standing in front of a statue, cutting a promo about how Cena's a disgrace to the legacy of America. And Rock's doing these hilarious bits. He's doing some of his most creative one-liners ever about Cena. And Cena's coming out there being the Doctor of Thuganomics one week, talking about how he'll rise above the hate of The Rock the next week. Crowds booing him, crowds cheer. It was amazing. Like, we got through Embrace the Hate with Cena being a simp for Eve Torres. We got through all of that, and then we get to this, and it was just,
What
it
a
was
time to
like,
be alive.
oh yeah. And then, I mean, we'll talk about the next year momentarily, but like, yeah, it was just everything about it. It was the stage as well, like Miami, Florida, Mania 28. Just it just clicked. Yeah, it just worked. Because I mean, comparing this to Rock and Hogan, it's very similar. Rock and Hogan had about 3 weeks build though. That was the one thing. Like the build for Rock and Hogan was the NWO crashing a truck into Rock's like bus. That was legit the build. But this, it was like you had a year of build off and on. You had Punk mentioning Rock in promos in a passive aggressive, it should have been me type way. And you had Cena being like, I'm wrestling Dwayne, I'm going to overcome the hate. And I mentioned, yeah, Rock throwing garden gnomes in a river. Just brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, you had Rock like in Boston, like you said, throwing garden gnomes in the river, calling Cena fruity pebbles. Just you had just iconic stuff, man. You had Cena being like, yeah, Rock.
I was going to say this. The thing that made that so brilliant, Rock knew absolutely how to get the disenfranchised 18 to 49 male fan like involved and like turn them to anti-Cena. So Rock made all the anti-Cena people want to buy the pay-per-view, pay $60 to watch Cena get beaten. And then Cena made all the people, all the little kids, the mums, the families want to see Cena rise above hate and beat the mean Rock. Like it was just, this got everyone involved somehow. Or if you didn't care, you just want to see Rock and Cena, the biggest wrestling match in the 10 years. Like it was just phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you said it. The rest of 2012, we get the Cena redemption story. You got Cena Brock. Actually, we have to talk about this. The night after WrestleMania 28, the Monday Night Raw after, Brock Lesnar makes his triumphant return to WWE, and he confronts John Cena. Really, an underrated moment where Brock Lesnar goes to shake Cena's hand, and Cena's like, "Oh, hey, Brock," and then he gets F5. And then they proceed to have an MMA match like 3 weeks later at Extreme Rules, where Brock just beat the ever living shit out of Cena, and Cena somehow won. And it was like,
yeah.
And it's like, you're telling us. Then the WWE's telling us 6 months later, oh, look how down bad Cena is. He can't beat The Rock. CM Punk PTS'd him. Yeah, it's like, wait, but this guy beat Brock Lesnar in a legitimate fight where Brock like broke him open the hard way. You're telling us that Cena's down bad, but whatever. I digress. 2012. What else does Cena do? He has some good matches with Punk.
I have a quick rant. I'll never forget this. This 8-year-old me watching. Actually, I was 9 by this point. I was watching WWE Experience. This is April of 2012. They're doing the whole Cena's down bad. His personal life's falling apart. His professional life's falling apart. He couldn't beat Dwayne Johnson in a match which everyone was watching. And then I will never forget this. We have John Cena versus Lord Tensai on Raw. We have Matt Bloom, a 300-pound man with Japanese tattoos all over his face, beating Cena clean in a match on Raw. And then this set up Cena versus Laurinaitis at Over the Limit 2012 in a match that infamously main evented over Punk and Bryan for the WWE title. I'll never forget that. Watching Cena down horrendous. You had Big Show getting like embarrassed on Raw because Big Show was caught impersonating John Laurinaitis backstage segment, and then John Laurinaitis is, like, how dare you impersonate me? Like, I can't do Laurinaitis, but yeah, John Laurinaitis, embarrassing Big Show. And this is all part of Cena's redemption somehow. And you got pay-per-views closing with Big Show sobbing in the ring, punching Cena. Like, bro, what is this, bro? Like,
yeah, the Lord Tensai thing. You brought me back to that. Wow.
I will never forget where I was. I remember sitting like on my carpet in my living room watching that, being like, who is this 300-pound Japanese guy and why is he beating Cena? Like,
it was such a joke. This was A-Train. This was A-Train beating John Cena in the middle of the ring on Raw. A-Train. Matt Bloom. Unbelievable.
This is the guy his gimmick in 2003 was that he had a hairy back, and he was the one who was in 2012, a month after Cena had just had this biggest match ever with The Rock. This guy was beating Cena near enough clean on Raw. All that happened was Laurinaitis walked out and then Cena just lost. This was terrible. And then, at No Way Out, Cena won a cage match against Big Show, and then Vince was there yelling, "Your fight" at John Laurinaitis. And then Cena won Money in the Bank, and it was going to be redemption for Cena. Cena won a Money in the Bank match that featured Kane, Big Show, who broke a ladder rung because he was obese, and Miz. And then Cena won a fatal 4-way Money in the Bank match. And then, Kevin, Cena announced his cash-in for Raw 1000, Kevin. What happens next, pal?
We get CM Punk turned heel. CM Punk turned heel of The Rock. GTS The Rock. And yep. That's what we got.
Yep.
We got a what was it at the time? A 40-year-old Hollywood movie star having a fake wrestling move executed upon him by a tattoo parlor. By a tattoo, I don't even know how you I just butchered that. By a tattoo artist.
From Chicago. Like a harmless tattoo connoisseur from Chicago.
Yeah, he just executed a fake wrestling move on the biggest movie star in Hollywood history. On the middle of the ring on a 3-hour Raw in the hardest of the summer in 2012. That's what we got. It was Cena cashed in. That's what WWE gave us. Like I'm watching that. I'm like, bro, are you kidding me, bro? Like we can't even cheer CM Punk now. At least when he was a babyface and Vince was like, here, you can be the upper mid-card champion, run around, defend your title against Bryan. We could cheer him. Now it's like we have to boo him now. Like, come on, bro. Like, could I have something? Then we got all the. I'm not even. I don't want to go into it.
Look what happened at SummerSlam. Like I mentioned a moment ago, Cena was like the fifth wheel, lost in the shuffle of everything. Look where Cena was for SummerSlam 2012. Obviously, you main eventing that show with the perfect storm. You got Triple H and Brock, sure, whatever. Then you've got Cena involved in this weird storyline where, like, AJ Lee is, I guess, in love with CM Punk, and Bryan's getting cucked out in the storyline, and Big Show's still feuding with Cena, even though Cena beat Big Show 3 months prior at No Way Out. And then Cena's involved against Punk, and Big Show's there, and AJ Lee's the GM, skipping around everywhere. Bryan's still upset. Now Bryan's in a tag team with Kane, and there's this whole... It's so convoluted. It's so messy. You get through SummerSlam, you get Cena and Punk at Night of Champions. Awesome match in Boston. Punk's wearing the Yankee pinstripes. Just hilarious. And then Cena gets hurt, and then really you wind up, Kevin, back to 2013. And Punk Rock 2. Oh, sorry, Cena Rock 2, pal.
Yes, let's please go to 2013, please. I'm done talking about 2012.
Easy. I can just run you through. Go ahead. So you've got John Cena. He's had this horrible year. He's been down horrendous. Lord Tensai's beaten him on Raw. He's lost a pay-per-view main event versus John Laurinaitis. Cena, he's down horrible. He just isn't making the most money in the company and being the biggest star and the face. Forget all that. Cena's down horrible. He lost to Ziggler at a meaningless TLC pay-per-view. He's lost 6 WWE title matches. He's been an afterthought. Roll into 2013, he wins the Rumble, pal. He tosses Ryback out of the ring. He quote-unquote buries Ryback to win the Rumble. And then that sets up Cena versus Rock 2, twice in a lifetime. Cena's redemption. I don't think anyone thought Rock would win this match. I think most people either thought Punk should have been involved in the match somehow, or that they shouldn't have done the match altogether. So yeah, Kevin, like, what do you think of this?
I just wasn't invested. I remember hearing, oh, Rock's coming back. Oh, they're gonna do something different. Okay, we'll get Rock versus Punk. Whatever. We'll get Rock versus Triple H. We'll get Rock versus Rock. Yeah, we'll get something. Rock versus Undertaker. Who knows? Then it's like, oh, wait. We're going to get Cena versus Rock. Wait. They just wrestled once in a lifetime the year before. Now we're getting twice in a lifetime. Oh, great. And it was so predictable. It's like you knew Cena was going to win. It was a match that WWE did so that people on Good Morning America can talk about WWE for 30 seconds. And ESPN can talk about WWE for 30 seconds. Like, that legitimately is the only reason. So Rock could be like at an award show accepting an award for one of his movies and be like, I can't wait to beat up that Fruity Pebble John Cena in 2 weeks at WrestleMania. Like, that's really all it was done for. It was a publicity stunt. It's a long way of me saying it. It was a publicity stunt. Other than that, I really have nothing else to say about it. The match wasn't good. I think, was this the one that Rock got hurt in, or was that the first one?
Yeah, he tore his... Oh, I forget what he did. He tore something 5 minutes in. He tells a story about this. How, like, you know, I remember watching some, like, motivational speech with The Rock that he gave to the LA Lakers, like, 3 years ago. He was like, yeah, when I'm 5 minutes into a match where 80,000 people are live, the world's watching, you can't let the team down. You have to push through. And in other words, Rock tore his something like 5 minutes in, and they had a mediocre match.
I think he tore his pec. Let me look it up.
Probably did, but yeah, so he injures himself. They have this 25-minute match. Cena just wins with an... Oh, was it an AA? I think he just won. And then they do the big moment, Kevin, to close the show. Rock's pointing at Cena. This is the guy. This is the guy who's the champion. And Kevin.
He tore his abdomen and adductor muscles. Wow.
Jesus. God, that did him for good. Jesus. Yeah, so then Kevin, I don't know, how entrenched as a fan were you in this time period, the Mania 29 time period? Because this is when I was like obsessed. I was fully involved, and the hate Cena got here was ridiculous, dude.
Yeah, I was pretty invested. I wasn't watching every single week, but I was paying attention. Like, I was watching YouTube videos and reading the dirt sheets and stuff. I was keeping up. I would watch if something was interesting, but yeah, to say I was watching every week would be a lie. This was, I believe, Cena Ryback, right? We got that where Ryback turned heel.
Not to almost hijack the podcast, but because of how entrenched I was with the fandom at the time, I just want to tell the story of this one. I remember watching Good Mike work literally the week after Mania 29, did a 20-minute rant on his YouTube channel all about how the Cena hate is ridiculous and the fans are just out of line nowadays. And it was all because at the time, the whole narrative was that Cena's a horrible person. He's been on top for 8 years now. I'm sick of Cena. Boo, he can't wrestle. This was after Mania 29 was the apex of the anti-Cena. The hate he was getting was ridiculous. And then Good Michael was yelling about for 20 minutes. Like, what would people rather see than this right now? What could WWE do? You take Cena off the show, then what? You get Brodus Clay and the Funkadactyls dancing in the ring for a whole segment. Like, what are you supposed to do? Like, Cena's a bad person because he's with a Susan G. Komen woman or ambassador in the ring on Raw for 5 minutes. What would you rather see? A 4-minute match with Tyson Kidd and Mason Ryan? Like, what was there besides Cena this time? So, yeah, you get Cena and Ryback, Kevin. This was just not very good. It was not. It was. What do you think of this first?
I thought it was funny that the whole storyline was based on like bullying, like Ryback's this bully heel, and then WWE's pushing this anti-bully campaign like on commercials. I'm just like, bro, okay, whatever. I remember Cena coming out with the championship.
Oh, there, John. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I remember Cena coming out with the championship every single week, and he would be he'd hold the belt up and he'd put that mean face on, and he'd walk through the crowd and he'd eat the booze. And yeah, this was probably the apex of the Cena hate, because the moment was so just whitewashed, forced. Where The Rock, like, he lifts Cena's arm up, hands him the belt, they hug, and it's like come on, like, bro, come on, we don't need to see this, bro. We know you guys don't like each other in real life. We know this. We heard the interviews. We know the tension is there. There was just so much there. The Ryback feud, it was whatever. I don't really remember much from 2013. I don't remember much. I just remember, really the only thing I remember from Cena's career is the WrestleMania 30 match with Wyatt. Like, that's where my mind picks up. Like, they did the crap where he was given the belt at TLC, or they had the match with Orton where they unified the belts, whatever.
The biggest match in WWE history at TLC 2013. Like, that's pathetic. Yeah, nah. So yeah, the Ryback stuff. Cena wins the 3 stages of Hell match at Payback. That feud ends. Cena then wins. He has the WWE title match with Mark Henry. That's worth mentioning. Mark Henry time and speech. Cena comes out and goes, "You can't see me, Jack," and then Mark Henry just punches him. So Cena beats Mark Henry, and then from there they really fast forward to Mania 30, pal. So yeah, we'll go to there. Let's go.
Yeah, WrestleMania 30. So you've got really an interesting time to be a wrestling fan. The Bray Wyatt really catches fire, and he's doing, the whole world in his hands, the fireflies, every arena Bray Wyatt walks into, you got just thousands of cell phone lights, and yeah.
It was great because you got Bray Wyatt, a guy who, he was cool. The Wyatt family was different, stood out. Then the stuff, the Shield, and then you get to WrestleMania, and we alluded to it before. Cena trying to end the legacy, Wyatt trying to end the legacy of Cena. You got Cena looking, he's washing his face in a mirror. He looks up and then there's a sheet mask and he turns around, it's not there. Like, stuff like that. It reminded me of when they're doing that with Austin back at 2001. He's like looking in the mirror and stuff like that. It's just cool stuff. And then you get to Mania 30, match is all right. Cena looked like he was going to turn heel in the match, and they were telling that story, but he stuck tried and true because hustle, loyalty, and respects the nation. Give me money. Like, Cena stayed true to himself. He beat the evil Bray Wyatt and then put him through a box 2 pay-per-views later.
Yeah, very confusing. He literally buried Bray Wyatt, like legit in a match, literally buried him. But yeah, one of the most botched angles I would say was Bray Wyatt's run. Like that was the peak of Bray Wyatt. Obviously, he's become the Fiend and he's still doing big things. But of the Bray Wyatt, the cult leader character, that was the peak. The Cena feud. After Cena beat him, it was like, oh, okay, he's just another guy now. And he lost every single feud. He's like kissing Dean Ambrose. He got scared Seth Rollins, like looking at Bray Wyatt, like Bray Wyatt is some spider, like some evil demon spider. Yeah, whatever.
The pal, he's got the whole C Nation in his hands. They just Bray Wyatt had the arena seeing the whole world in his hands. And you have Cena in the ring doing like his emotional scene acting. I'll never forget watching like Bruce Blitz reviews on YouTube where he's got him in like a panel of like 3 grown men screaming about Cena's terrible acting. The Cena's doing like the I'm depressed, I'm confused acting as Bray Wyatt's got like a bunch of 8-year-olds in sheep masks singing whole world in his hands. Like that was just classic peak WWE, pal. But yeah, anything else you got on this?
Interesting stuff. I don't remember much of his 2014. It's another theme, another common theme. I just can't remember anything after Cena's WrestleMania run.
Yeah. I mean, as far as I can tell you what happened after that. So I mean, after Mania 30, Cena he wins the WWE title in his hometown of Boston and Money in the Bank because Bryan stuffed his neck and couldn't wrestle. So Cena just wins and then gets abused by Brock at SummerSlam.
Yes.
Brutally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I remember now. So yeah, he wins the belt. And then it was like, oh, Cena's going to beat Brock. That's cool. Just Brock is the guy that ends the streak, and then Cena's going to beat the guy that ended the streak. But no, Cena got demolished. Brock literally squashed him. And all the anti-Cena guys, they became Brock Lesnar fans for life at this moment. This very moment, Brock Lesnar earned millions and millions of fans from this very match. It was just like, it was shocking, honestly, to see this Super Cena, the guy that literally buried Bray Wyatt, beat The Rock, he's done this, that, he's done everything, like 19-time champion. It was just really amazing to see.
Yeah, legit, like, this whole time period was just crazy. Because, I mean, they did the SummerSlam match. That was supposed to be Daniel Bryan getting, like, his life ended by Lesnar, which, in a way, not that I kind of wish that happened, but that would have been fitting. You have Daniel Bryan holding the WWE title for a few months, has a feud with Kane, what have you, feud with the Authority, and then the Authority bring in Brock Lesnar, and Brock just assassinates Bryan in the ring, 16 Germans, Bryan gets paralyzed in the ring, that type of thing. Like, that would have been what they were going for, but Cena takes a spot. Cena's the great company guy. He agrees to it, gets destroyed, and then the next few months were weird, Kevin. They really were. It was Cena and Ambrose versus Rollins, Kane, and Orton every week for like 4 months, and you've got Cena and Team Cena versus the Authority at Survivor Series, and Ziggler's rolling up grown men, and Sting's getting involved, and Cena's having a match with Rollins every week. It was just weird, dude.
Yeah, it was. It was a weird time to be a wrestling fan. Brock Lesnar now, he's not on TV. It's clear that Roman Reigns is becoming the top guy. And then Cena is just kind of there. It was really where it was like, okay, they're starting to prepare for life after Cena at this point. You know, Rollins, Ambrose, Reigns, Wyatt.
I think that's a great way to almost segue out and finish off this Elite Heat bio, because this late 2014, after Cena got assassinated by Lesnar, it was clear that I believe that was like the end of his era. I think it's fair to say that from Mania 21 through SummerSlam 2014, that was Cena's run as far as like the definitive top star. And then after that, it was clear that Roman was the next guy. So in that regard, Kevin, I mean, anything else you want to touch on?
Not really. There's not really much else to say. I mean, you want to talk about the banger match at 2015 Royal Rumble? Or you want to save that for the next?
We'll finish at that because I mean, we opened the how almost grateful we are to have Cena nowadays. Now Cena's like the savior and whatnot, and really we'll talk about the time which was the contrary. The 2015 Royal Rumble, I believe, was in Philadelphia. This I will never forget. This is the triple threat match: Brock Lesnar, Seth Rollins, John Cena, WWE World Heavyweight Title. Cena, his music hits, Kevin, and the reaction is legitimately 14,000 people singing "John Cena sucks."
Yeah, that was the one where Cena comes out and he's like yelling, right? He's all like giddy at everyone. He's like, "Oh, they hate me, Cena Nation." I think that was the entrance.
right, he's jumping around, and then he's you can tell him it's right away. He's like, oh damn, well, this crowd doesn't like me. Like that 2015 Rumble crowd is probably my least favorite crowd of all time, but nonetheless, as far as
that's easily my least favorite. Easily, they booed The Rock for God's sake.
Reigns isn't ready. We want Rusev, who's been in the. We're not going to start on this again.
No.
But yeah, that whole show, the crowd was hating Cena. No appreciation for Cena. We want guys like Rollins. We want Bryan, Rock, Cena. These guys suck. Anyway, so we'll end it on that, Kevin. Cena receiving absolute hate at the 2015 Rumble. Just gross.
Yeah, they had a banger match, though. Let's talk about that. Cena, Rollins, and Brock Lesnar. Triple threat match, Royal Rumble 2015. Seth Rollins coming out party. Easily one of the best matches in modern history of the last 7 years. Probably one of the top 10 matches that took place in the WWE ring. This was 3 guys that just beat the ever-living hell out of each other. It was an amazing match. Go back and watch it if you've never seen it. Despite the crowd, the crowd wanted Rollins to win for some ungodly reason. But yeah, Brock Lesnar wins, and it was a really good triple threat match.
Rollins knows more fake moves than Cena does, and Rollins has had better matches in PWG and ROH. So of course, that's why we're going to boo the biggest star in wrestling in the past 10 years. That's just common sense, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, God,
that's how it works.
Anyway, yeah, that's been. I guess I don't even know what we're titling this bio. That's been the part 1 to the bio. Next week for Elite Heat, Kevin, it's going to be a big one. We're going to finish off the Cena timeline from really the Rusev stuff through to right now with Roman Reigns, and then what the future holds for Cena. I guess we can mention Cena's movies and whatnot. Everything else Cena does, his legacy, all-time status, etc. So,
yes,
Kevin,
stay tuned next week for when we talk about how John Cena buried the top-tier talent of the likes of Rusev, Cesaro, and Kevin Owens.
He buried Neville on an episode of Raw. Damn it.